Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Turned Out a Punk Classics, where we take older episodes and bring them back into the feed. Today, we are looking at the great Jeff Cannonball, someone who is a legend in deathmatch wrestling, hardcore punk, an amazing father, and an all-around incredible person. Jeff is someone I first met years ago, like 10 years ago now, when I was making the Tournament of Death documentary with Vice, Bloodlust. I met him at the H2O show, which was the first H2O show that Matt Tremont put on. He was working that night with the great Kevin Sullivan. And he came out to Plastic Bomb by Poison Idea. He had a Tear It Up Flip t-shirt for sale on his merch table. And he became one of my favorite wrestlers right there and then. Over the years, I got to know Jeff and came to realize that, as I said, he's one of the greatest people of all time, and was honored to have him not on the show once, but twice, one time at a live show, and then before that, or a normal episode. Recently, Jeff has been diagnosed with ALS, also known as Lou Gehrig's disease, and it sucks, but I think a testament to how amazing Jeff is. A lot of people have come together to try and raise some money for Jeff and his incredible family. So if you are so inclined, please click on the links down below. There's a GoFundMe page, which you can find a link below to donate to. There's also a fantastic Cannonball Fest benefit wrestling show to go for Jeff Cannonball's fight against ALS. That's going to be taking place on Sunday, Sunday, September 14th at 2:30 p.m. at the New Province High School, and there's going to be an incredible lineup of wrestlers there that day. I think Joey Janela's already announced, MJF is announced, and I bet you there's going to be a lot more because, as I say, Jeff's one of the greats of all time. A lot of the fundraising is being organized by RTF Records. You can go over to RTF Records on Instagram and find links for all this stuff. As I say, there'll also be links down below in the description for this thing, too. There's also a great compilation which has come out, Jeff Cannonball, Fuck Lou Gehrig, Disease, in smaller print. Which is kind of like a discography of all of the incredible hardcore bands and punk bands that Jeff has played in over the years. There's like the Big Heads demo, the Altered Boys demo. There's Black Kite stuff on there too. So you can pick that up over at rtfrecords.com. And all the proceeds are going to Jeff. There's also some reprints of t-shirts. And as you can see from those, Hatebreed shirts and Descendants-inspired shirts. Because Jeff is a true 100% hardcore kid, punk rocker. And if you are able to, please donate or go to these shows and help out. Shout out to Sam, Milo, and Jeff. Fuck ALS. And Jeff Cannonball rules. Sit back, relax, and enjoy Jeff Cannonball, not once but twice, on Turned Out a Punk Classic. Jeff, thank you so much for coming on the show. As I was just telling you off air, you are by far one of the ones I've been most excited to have on this thing because I think, like being down there shooting the Tournament of Death documentary, there's like this whole part that unfortunately didn't make the film, but we went to a show the night before and like we were filming me and I'm just like standing there kind of like, I don't even think I had noticed your merch table at that point. And so I was just I was just standing there shooting a scene and all of a sudden I heard Plastic Bomb start to play and I just flipped my wig and it was on camera, the whole thing too. But yeah, Jeff, so thank you so much for coming on this show.
Of course, thank you for having me. Like I said before, like it's awesome to be doing it, and then it's also kind of nerve wracking because the only other wrestlers you had on were Robbie Brookside, MVP, and then little old me.
Well,
so it's a weird feeling.
Well, as MVP has said several times on his own podcast, he's kind of like wrapping up his career at this point. Like kind of like, he's still, able to do amazing things and still,
sure.
But he wants to finish on a high and stuff like this at this point. He said, and Brookside is unfortunately, because of a hardcore induced injury, been ruled out of competing in future wrestling events. So I'm going to say this, you're probably my favorite professional athlete in the world.
it's very weird to be called an athlete because you've seen what I look like.
Yeah,
But I appreciate that.
but Jeff, I've also seen what you do, and there's very few athletes I know that could do what you do.
I mean, it's part athlete, part kind of like circus freak show, and I kind of like that.
Well, that's all. That's you know what? If all sports were like that, I would probably like sports a lot more.
Oh hell yeah!
And also, we were going through like all the things we're going to enjoy talking about today, punk and wrestling beforehand, and I forgot we do have a third touchstone point. We are both friends of Tom.
This is true. I actually, when we were talking off air, I thought that was the third one, and I thought we were 3 out of 4. But
We are 3 out of 4. I forgot that. I just like, you know what, the fought thing is one of those ones that you forget, and then when you remember someone's a secret fought, it like, oh my gosh, like there's people out there right now that don't even like, we're talking in code too. There's other people out there right now that we're getting very excited at the prospect of talking about the best show, but there's other people out there that don't know what we're talking about. So, you know, we're both friends of Tom. We will get into that later on. But Jeff, I've blabbed enough already, and this is about you. So we got to start the way I start this thing off all the time, which is, how did you get into punk? Do you remember the first time you ever kind of came across the genre?
sure, I've got kind of like I guess the boring answer, and then I have kind of like when I got really into it answer. The boring one is like much like wrestling. I got into punk kind of through my dad, and he's not necessarily like an old punk guy or anything. He's like a classic rock guy with Led Zeppelin and the Beatles and Black Sabbath and things like that, which is all good and all that too. But I even remember from like a young age, the records I liked most was when he played the Ramones. Um, and then I always thought the Ramones were cool. I know he had a couple like Sex Pistols videos and stuff, so I always thought that was cool. But to me, the Ramones were always the best. But like if that was like kind of all I knew for the longest time, and then summer from eighth grade going into freshman year of high school, I ended up at a punk show because I got a flyer at a skate shop, which said there was also going to be like punk bands playing and a skate demo and all this going. At the time, I was all about skateboarding, so I went and I saw my first show, which was a band. The first band I saw was a band called A Thin Line Fading, which members went on to be in like Down in Flames and Tear It Up, and I want to say even something like Reign Supreme or like one of those like uh, tougher Philly style bands.
Yeah, yeah.
And it was bands like that, and then I can't remember who headlined. It was either American Nightmare or Shai Hulud, and I left before they played because I was 13 years old and my mom had to pick me up so we can go to my grandma's birthday.
Well, I guess before we get into that show, I got to ask: did your dad go to any shows? Do you know, or was he like,
Uh,
is he from the New Jersey area as well?
yeah, he was born and raised in New Jersey and all that. He's got stories about all sorts of shows, but I mean, for the most part, it's more like he's seen Frank Zappa a ton of times, and
Yeah.
he's seen Black Sabbath, and I don't remember, but I don't think he's seen the Ramones. I feel like that's something I would have asked him more about. But yeah, he's gone to like plenty of like like classic rock shows and things like that.
Okay, awesome. And so, like, yeah, Thin Line Fading. That sounds so familiar. But who from Tear It Up was in it?
It was one of the later members, Ryan Eckert. I think he didn't
Oh,
join until right after Nothing to Nothing came out, if I'm correct.
yeah. He was in Down in Flames too, right? Was
Was
he?
he? I don't know.
No,
I know
who's the guy?
John Devlin. I'll get his name right. He was in A Thin Line Fading, and he was in Down in Flames. And uh, honestly, I can't remember the guy's name who went on to do Reign Supreme. I never met the dude, so I don't remember his name as well.
I could have sworn there was like a member, because this has come up on this show a couple times now, and especially on footnotes, and it's also been the source of some controversy. But there was a member of Down in Flames that left, or no, didn't leave, but was in both bands for a time, and that has been cited as the reason Down in Flames broke up on the show. So I was just trying to figure that out, just
I'm
because.
not too sure, but I'm a little bit younger than most of those dudes, so
Yeah.
like at the time, like I didn't really know any of them.
Yeah.
I mean, later on, like I've gotten to know plenty of them and all that, but like at the time, I didn't know any of them like that, so I
Mm.
wouldn't be able to really help you out. I'm sorry about
No, no,
that.
don't worry. Don't worry. That's just the nerdy shit that I'm kind of like, the demise of certain New Jersey bands in the early 2000s, mid 2000s is a area of fascination and study for me.
See, and I think that's what I'm worried about, the nerdy stuff, because that's where I don't know if I can hang with you
Don't
or your
worry.
previous guests.
You'll be able to stomp all over me when it comes to the wrestling talk. And I know from conversations with you that it gets nerdy enough for this to be amazing. So I
Fair
guess
enough, I'll take it.
at that show, was it like, I guess, like, what was your, like, had you seen other kids like that at your high school or noticed other kids like that? I guess you're in junior high at 13, right?
Yeah, yeah. I was going from junior high to high school, and I don't know if I knew much about it existing. I later found out like some of like the older kids I hung out with at the time, they knew about stuff like that, and they would like suggest me other things and all that. But at the time, like that was completely new to me because I remember going. And I don't remember why, some dumb 13-year-old shit. I had a problem with one of my other friends then who was skateboarding. So I stayed away from the skateboarding because I didn't want to like see him for some reason. And I remember watching a thin line fading and they had X's on their hands. And I was like, what? This is so cool. I don't know what any of this means. And then they ended with the song. And I remember being a dumb little kid. And I'm sure, you know, seeing it now, I'd probably be embarrassed of my own self, going up to one of them and being like, wow, what was that? Like, I bought their demo tape, which I didn't even know at the time that cassettes were still like a thing. And I remember being like, is the last song you guys played on this? Because that was awesome. And I remember him looking at me and being like, no, that was a cover. And I was like, I don't even really know what that means. And
Yeah.
so I found out it was Don't Tread on Me by the Cro-Mags. And I went home and downloaded that on Napster that night.
That's awesome. I don't know why you'd be embarrassed about it. You're 13. It's not like, you know, if you're
Good
like a
point.
if you're like a 33-year-old self-professed hardcore kid and having that problem, that might be something. But
Fair, fair.
um, so I guess like, yeah, you went home and downloaded this Cro-Mags song, and was that kind of like where it began for you as far as like the thirst for knowledge for the stuff, or kind of the quest to find the scene?
Yeah, I think so. Like I found like Cro-Mags, and then like I think also that shows like probably through just being a kid asking questions, I found out like what Minor Threat was because I found out what Straight Edge was that day. And so I remember like listening to Minor Threat, and then I went to this record store a town over from me, and I got the Minor Threat discography. And then the woman there was like, "Oh, like, are you into punk?" And I was like, I don't really know." And so she suggested Gorilla Biscuits and Dag Nasty to me. So I remember I think I at least got Start Today that day as well. And so it
Wow.
kind of all just happened. Yeah, it kind of all happened real fast. Where like I was like, whoa, there's this kind of music I don't really know that much about. And next thing I know the Cro-Mags and
Yeah.
Dag Nasty and Gorilla Biscuits and all that.
That's amazing. So did you like completely bypass metal and pop punk and just get
Uh,
like right into like legit in the cut hardcore?
well, no, at the time, I definitely think I probably had like some Slipknot CDs and things like that. So I had that, but I
Yeah.
was never as like into it as like other people I knew. Um, so I guess like I just kind of had like my CDs and that was what I had. And then when I found all that stuff, I fell in love with it. And then kind of like all of punk just kind of like came together for me over the next like course of probably 2-3 years. So I got into like Infest at the same time that I was getting into like No Effects and Rancid and things like that. And like it kind of all just came together. And so like even today, like I could still listen to No Effects and then put on Rorschach in the same like sitting and I'll be happy.
Oh, same here, buddy. Speaking my
Good.
language with that mix right there. Um, well, and it's funny because like, I spent like this whole weekend just like punishing people about punk and hardcore and things like that. And it's like, it really feels like kind of pre Nirvana, and not that Nirvana mandated this, but like that just like people's perception of this sort of stuff changed in a big way. But it wasn't uncommon for like No Effects, maybe not to play with Rorschach, but certainly play with Neurosis and Descendants to play with the Melvins and things like that.
Right, right.
That was like just how it worked back then.
Yeah, and I'm still like into like all that stuff. So like I like when I was playing in more like punk oriented bands, they would all make fun of me for liking like, like Unbroken and all that stuff. But then when I was doing like a band that sounded like 90s vegan edge bands, like everybody was like, "Oh, you like that stuff that's like circle jerks? Like, how old are you?" And like, I just like everything. And to this day, I still can listen to all that stuff and be happy with all of it.
Mm-hmm. Well, you mentioned playing in bands too, and like, I guess when were you already like doing like music at this point, or was it the music something that came through punk?
That came through punk. Like, I think I mean, my dad played bass and drums and guitar, so like I kind of knew what it all was, but I never like played anything.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I got into punk around, I think 14 or 15, my dad got me a bass for my birthday, and I started playing like in this, crappy like middle school, like young high school punk band and stuff like that.
What was it called?
Um, First we were called Black Coffee, which was weirdly
Pretty
after the
cool.
Black Flag song.
Yeah.
Yeah, but then we decided we had to be more serious because that's what freshmen in high school have to do, and so we changed our name to Scared to Death. And I remember an older punk dude that I became friends with in high school be like, "No, Black Coffee was a cooler name." And I was like, "No, you don't get it, man." But he definitely got it more than I did.
So, what was the vibe of "Scared to Death"?
Uh, Man, like if I wrote the song, because at the time, like I got into like the like I guess you'd call it like old school like the '80s stuff like real quick. So like if I wrote a song, it'd be super fast, 30, 40 seconds long,
Mm-hmm.
and if somebody else did, it might sound like Rancid. And
Okay.
so like it was all over the place. We never did anything. I have like a basement recording somewhere. I mean, I probably couldn't even find it at this point. But yeah, it was like your basic like freshman high school band where it's like we like all this stuff. We don't really know the difference. We just want to play whatever we think sounds like these bands we like.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I
So,
remember we did an Exploited cover. That's all I really remember.
what exploited song?
Uh, Honestly, it was probably Sex and Violence, but I
Yeah.
don't really remember.
Yeah, of course.
But being that young, it had to be that.
uh, so I guess like, yeah, where did you kind of go at this point? Like, you mentioned playing like, you're kind of getting into everything. Like, what were some of the local bands that you were kind of gravitating? Or I guess what was your next show after this skate park show?
Oh man. I don't even remember. I got really into. There was a venue in Bound Brook, New Jersey, which is only like probably like 20, 25 minutes from me, that I can get my parents to drop me off at. It was called Hamilton Street Cafe,
Mm-hmm.
and I saw, Tear It Up was like my favorite local band. Like when I found them, I thought that was the coolest thing I ever heard, and like they're still one of my favorite bands. I saw Tear It Up plenty of times. I saw Blind Society plenty of times, which I remember you discussing with Brian Gorsener
Yes.
on here as well. So it's weird that Blind Society has come up twice on here, probably
I
at
think it
least.
even came up on the David Up episode.
That would make sense.
Yeah.
Too.
Yeah, of course.
I saw them countless times because they seem to play there all the time.
Didn't
There
they
was a band
tour?
called Kill.
Sorry, I think I remember them touring with Tear It Up, maybe, because I remember seeing them in Toronto, and I couldn't imagine who else it would have been with.
I mean, like I said, like at the time I was younger than all these guys, and
Yeah.
like I wasn't really like as outgoing. But I remember thinking like, oh, those guys are all like they're like best friends,
Yeah.
and so like I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah, of course.
But pretty much, I would go to this venue, Hamilton Street Cafe, and I'd see whatever was there. If it said punk show on the website, I would probably go. Like, I remember seeing like World Inferno a bunch of times,
Mm-hmm.
and then I'd go and see like screamo bands like The Assistant and like I don't know if Seisha played, but bands in that vein.
Mm-hmm.
And like if it said like punk or hardcore or screamo or any of that, I'd go to that show, like that venue for everything because it was close enough. And like I didn't really have friends in high school that were into the same kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I would always try to bring people out. It didn't always work out. So a lot of times it would just be my parents dropping me off and then like go shop or something and pick me back up.
Yeah. Were you meeting kids at these shows at this point, or I guess I would have come later, right?
Yeah, it was like on and off where like I'd get to know somebody and like we'd be cool at shows, but it never like not until later did it translate into like hanging out outside of shows and things like that.
Mm-hmm. So I guess like at the same time, you're probably are you already into wrestling at this point?
I was very into wrestling. I was into wrestling since oh man, before I could remember anything, honestly. Like
Yeah.
I used to always say that like I got into wrestling when I was like 4 years old, 5 years old. And then I remember my mom being like, no, you liked it like before you could even talk. Like her telling, because my dad was into wrestling too. That's how I got into that.
Yeah.
And so I remember her being like, if WWF was on, that's what you were glued to, and you were the happiest when that was on. And then when it was over, I'd be kind of bummed out or whatever. So there was really no time where I didn't like wrestling in my life.
So I guess like yeah, what year is this that I like you're would be 13 in like 2000s? What is that?
2000. Yeah,
2000.
2000 actually. Yeah.
So you're like kind of like right around you got to kind of like live through, the Attitude era. Did you get into new
Right.
ECW stuff? Were you seeing that at all in New Jersey or on TV or anything?
Uh, to keep going back to the one thing is I remember one day my dad being like, "Oh, you got to see this stuff that's on at like 2 a.m. It's not like that fake stuff. This is like, and my dad liked WWF, but he's like, it's not like that
Yeah.
fake stuff. This is
Yeah.
real. There's guys hitting each other with like frying pans." And I remember, I don't know why this is the one thing I remember, and I don't know who it was. It was probably one of like the luchadors or something, because somebody did a Frankensteiner off the top rope. And I remember that thinking like, that's not real. Like that can't be, that's impossible. And then he started taping it for me and I started watching and I fell in love with DCW, but I never got to go to any of the shows, even though like I live probably I grew up probably an hour from the arena.
Mm-hmm. Did you go to any WWF shows, I guess, at that point?
Yeah, I went to house shows, and
Mm-hmm.
my favorite thing I remember from that in the long line of me being a dumb little kid was I got a Bret Hart teddy bear.
Yeah.
And I remember I thought I was the coolest kid going to bed wearing the pink sunglasses that I would take off the bear. And then the next day, my parents flipped out because they thought I had pink eye because the paint would rub off in my eyes. So I just looked like a lunatic the next morning. And that's something I haven't thought about in a long time, actually.
Oh, I always wanted to get those glasses when you'd see Brett put them on like the kid at
Oh,
ringside.
of course.
But now
That
I'm
was the
like, I'm really
best.
glad I didn't. It seems like they.
Well, I think those were different than the teddy bear, like, painted sunglasses that I would put on my dumb, sweaty head.
I don't know. Do you think it's really they're like making different types of paint? I think it's the same paint. Like,
Good point. I was
uh,
just the only one who was wearing them to bed for some reason.
yeah, yeah. Like, who were your favorite wrestlers that kind of growing up?
I mean, right from the beginning, and I think this kind of like it's weird, like it kind of goes with a theme of my life. Ultimate Warrior was my number one from the
Okay.
time I can remember to who knows when, and I think that fits with like how I got into like punk and hardcore and even metal, and then later on deathmatch wrestling, because I always liked things that were just like fast and loud and different, and that's what the Ultimate Warrior was. He was this fucking lunatic who'd run to the ring, shaking the ropes and scream, and his promos were just him screaming whatever. And even like as I'm older, it doesn't make sense. So I don't know what I thought he was saying when I was a little kid. I just probably heard screaming. I was like, "Yep, that's my guy."
Mm-hmm.
And so like Ultimate Warrior was always number one. I was always like, I know it's cool to be like, oh, I like the heels, but I was always like, I loved Hacksaw Jim Duggan
Mm-hmm.
and Warrior. I never really liked Hogan because I always thought Warrior should have been what Hogan was.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I remember WrestleMania 6 losing my mind when I saw the Warrior win.
It's kind of like a Beatles Rolling Stone thing. I think if you were a little kid then, if you liked Hogan or Ultimate Warrior.
Right. Yeah, definitely. And I was 100% Warrior.
I think I was too. I remember when he came out and saved Hogan at Mania, and I just got like tears in my eyes. Like, just I was so
Right.
happy to see him coming, running in. I think that was that one at Caesar's Palace too. Ugh, eerily appropriate tonight.
Yeah, right. I can't remember. I want to say yes though.
Yeah, I remember it being outdoors, definitely. But anyway, I digress. This is becoming about me again. I'm sorry, Jeff.
I know you're much more interesting than me, so we can do
No,
that.
no, I'm
More
not.
people will listen.
Nope, trust me. They're sick of hearing about me interjecting my life. Don't worry. So I guess at this point you're kind of like getting into punk at the same point. You're I imagine getting more aware of wrestling. Like 2000 is also kind of what's considered the end of the Attitude Era, right?
Sure, yeah, yeah.
So what I get like, were there other kids around that were into punk and wrestling? Is what I'm awkwardly trying to get
Um,
at.
I don't really like. I'm trying to think of like the kids who I would try to like get into going to shows, and like eventually I got a few to like go to a bunch of shows with me and stuff like that, and they would be into it or they were into it. but like I can remember those weren't the kids who I would talk to about wrestling.
Mm-hmm.
Excuse me. Like because I remember like talking about wrestling more with like just random other kids in school, but they weren't really like the ones I'd hang out with outside, except for like a few who I remember. Fuck, you're making me remember all these things now. Me and this kid, Phil Marshall from my town. I don't know whatever like what he's doing now.
Yeah.
He later became one of the popular kids, and I was this fat nerd. I would sleep at his house, and we'd watch like WWF tapes all night. And then when we found ECW, we'd start like cutting up 2x4s, and then his dad was some kind of handyman because we'd cut 2x4s in half and Velcro them together, and those would be our tables, so we could do ECW style matches and things like that. But he was never into like punk or anything, so I think that was like, now that I'm thinking about it, and I haven't thought about this before, they were like two completely different portions of my life. And I think once I got into punk, it's kind of like you said, when the Attitude Era kind of ended, and so like I got way more into punk at that point, and that kind of like engulfed my life for a long time up until about like Eddie Guerrero died. Like I was still following it, but not as close.
Mm-hmm.
And Eddie Guerrero was always like, he was my favorite WCW guy, even though I was always a WWE, WWF kid. When he died, I remember being like I definitely like cried over wrestling that day,
Mm-hmm.
and I got way back into wrestling immediately.
Mm-hmm.
And then the two just kind of coexisted in my world. And then a buddy of mine, Pat, and we were both into like the same two things. So like, he's my best friend to this day, and he's been my best friend for a long time, and he's the one person I could think of where it's like, yeah, we'll talk wrestling all day, but then we're also going to talk about punk and hardcore and all that.
So I get like, when did you start another band? Your first band didn't play anything other than the Basements, but you do get out there, and eventually you and I become label mates. So
Yes.
Leading up to that, what's your next band?
Before we became label mates, as you say?
Yes, we're not going to get the Altar Boys for a
Well,
while yet. Maybe in this episode,
right.
Jeff. Maybe not. As you know, this show does move at a snail's pace.
Yeah, but that's what makes it fun.
Yeah.
My band after Scared to Death was called Cannonball.
Okay.
Which now gives you the idea of where I got that name from. It's not just a thinly veiled fat joke, even though it also is a thinly veiled fat joke. But I started doing Cannonball. I sang for that band, and we were all about like Underdog, and at the time like Locking Out records first became kind of a thing.
Yeah.
And we were all like worshiping Mental and Righteous Jams and all those bands. So we would just rip that off, and we were just like a crappy version of that. And
where did you first see those bands? Like, what was the first band in that kind of world you saw?
Mental. 100.
Okay.
Like I got really into Mental because what's the first 7-inch called? And you know this, or is that a song off it?
I think maybe it's called. It's like picture the cover of the eyes coming out of the brick wall. And,
yeah, like I remember that, but I can't remember the name. But I remember that blew my mind because like it was like, because at the time I was all about like, like Tear It Up and X-Files X and all these bands that just played straightforward, like super, super fast.
Mm-hmm.
And then this band came out, and I was like, okay, this makes me like that, like, I guess groove sounding hardcore more like that, more like kind of mochy hardcore without being like, mosh metal, whatever you want to call it.
It is, and you know this. I just looked over at my record box. It is, and you know this.
Okay. Yeah, like I thought that was the coolest record when I first heard it. Yeah. And
their vibe was just out of control. Like, you're right. Like, it's so different from, though I think X-Files X is like a super underrated band, especially that LP, which I still think weird.
That last LP was like mind blowing, and then they broke up, and I was so bummed out.
That LP, that last LP, you're right. It's just like so. I don't know. It was going somewhere really interesting. Like,
yeah,
really
and
cool.
like I liked everything they did up until that, and then that came out, and it was like, holy shit! Everybody should be listening to this right now. Like, why isn't this the biggest thing in the world?
Yeah, I felt the same.
I thought that was the coolest thing.
Yeah.
But also at the time I got really into like Kill Your Idols, so I would go see them because they played New Jersey every weekend at that point, or at least it felt like it, which I wasn't complaining about. And so like I found a lot of bands kind of just through going to see Kill Your Idols every weekend, and I'm almost positive Mental I first saw opening for them, and so I got into like that kind of hardcore as well.
Kill Your Idols are the only reason I ever got to play CBGBs.
I was at that show. I was definitely at that show.
The Forehead Warhead Tragedy one. Oh.
Yep.
And Mind Eraser too, I think, played, right?
I'm almost positive they did. Yeah, and I think that was the I think I've only seen Mind Eraser twice, actually, which is a weird thing to think about because that band's
Yeah.
also. Um,
How I like that also like yeah, just and this is going off just hints you've dropped, but like the stuff you're into, I would have thought Mind Eraser would have also been right up your alley.
I like them a lot, and I don't like. I think at the time they came out, and this is gonna sound so shitty of me, but I was such like an elitist where I was like, "That's not real power violence," and then like
Oh.
later on, I found out like, "Holy shit, no, this is fucking awesome."
Yeah, yeah.
Because I remember after Cannonball, I did a band called Black Kites, and that was the '90s vegan edge, like we want to be Endeavor and Unbroken. But I remember our drummer was all about Mind Eraser, and so he got me to give them another chance. I was like, "Holy shit, I'm an idiot!" And like, that's where I started being like, "All right, I was just an idiot." Like, because for some reason, for like after I was already into everything, including
Yeah.
like Blink-182 and NoFX and all that stuff, I got like heavy into being like, no, if it came out after '92, it's stupid. And so like I missed out on probably some cool stuff. And then he kind of got me to check out some things, and it was like, all right, no, this is awesome now, and I get it now.
Did
Yeah,
Cannonball like you guys played out with did you guys play out a lot or was it
we
still mainly basement
we
stuff?
never we never left New Jersey, but we did open for like uh we opened for like 100 Demons and Champion.
Okay.
So like, we got to play like, and those are like, they're not like kind of my bands, to be honest.
Yeah.
But like, yeah, I know like that's like that meant a lot to like other guys in the band, and we were all like 15, 16 years old.
Hmm.
So like, that was real cool for us. But like I remember we never played outside New Jersey. We did one split 7-inch with another band from New Jersey called This Means War.
Oh
Um,
wow.
yeah, but that's all we ever did,
I gotta find
actually.
that 7-inch now. I'm gonna be on
I
the
definitely have a couple copies of it somewhere, I think.
wow.
So I'll look for it.
Oh man, yeah, because I don't think that's even in your Discogs.
Yeah, I don't know. I think nobody cares enough to put it on a Discogs. Honestly, I didn't even know I had a Discogs until you just said that.
Yeah, no, you've got like a pretty complete one. Like I knew about the Altar Boy stuff and the Deranged thing, but I didn't really know that much about Black Kites. And then just kind of
Right.
after I met you, and I was like, oh shit, like the Gary the Squirrel 7-inch thing, which we're going to get to,
Right.
led me to that, and I was just like, oh shit, like started putting all this stuff together. But I guess that leads into talking about Black Kites. So when did you go? Like I guess you've always identified as being straight edge, right? From kind of you found out about it, right? I
Oh yeah,
assume.
from the first show. Like I remember like even as a kid, like I was always the kind of one who like I can't really say like I was like, I wasn't like a bad kid, but I wasn't like, you're like I wasn't an angel either.
Hmm.
Um I was kind of like a dumb, loud, goofy kid who got in trouble that way instead of like going out and drinking and doing drugs or whatever. But I remember even as a kid always being like, I don't get why everybody wants to drink. Like I'm having a good time. And then like at that show, finding out what straight edge meant, that first show, I found out what straight edge meant. I'm like, yeah, that's what I do.
Hmm.
And so like I kind of was already that, I guess, and it kind of just fit into what I was already doing. And being 13, 14 years old and kind of wanting to find that thing to identify with and things like that, it was like, yeah, I'll take this label. And now here I am at 29 years old, and I'll still like call myself straight edge, even though like, I'm not into like much like over the top straight edge hardcore or anything like that at this point. I don't
Yeah.
think like besides from going back to how I was, an elitist asshole, I love like Youth of Today and Uniform Choice and things like that. But I don't know. There's not too much like straight edge hardcore now that I'm like way into. Like,
Mm.
cause my even though I like everything, my taste definitely still goes towards like the faster stuff, and I feel like a lot of those bands don't, they're not all out about straight edge. Um,
That's the thing about Mind Eraser. Low key, every song's about being straight edge and
right,
hanging out with your
right,
friends. But you're
and
right. Like
that's
it's not. Yeah, like there's like periods like, but no, there's not a lot of Sirat Millettes type thing right now.
right, right, exactly, and like that's probably why I loved X Files X so much because
Mm-hmm.
they were a fast band who was all about straight edge.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But
What about veganism? Like, when did you kind of find out about that? Well, I guess it was pretty early on as well.
uh, yeah, that's all Propaganda's fault. um, I found them at a young age, probably right around the 15 years old. And actually, I went vegan. I went vegetarian at 15. So I probably found Propaganda right there, and like just clicking around their website as like a little impressionable kid, and I was like, yeah, I'll try this. And so I started being vegetarian at 15. Um, at some point more recent, I went vegan for about 5 years. And then this is going to sound weird. And I know this is kind of dumb, but about last year and a half ago, 2 years, I got like real depressed over a bunch of stuff going on. And instead of like turning to drinking or anything, I just started eating pizza again. And like, not that that like cured everything. I just remember at the time being like, well, fuck it, pizza's great. I'm just gonna eat pizza now. And so I started doing that, and then like I gained a ton of weight, and so now I'm kind of like, yo, I've been vegan again for the past 2 months,
I
and
wonder.
it's been
I wonder what's like a bigger sin in the mind of Hard Carl. I
I
wonder
feel
what.
I feel like as I've heard you describe me as terrifying and all that, I still feel like I'll let you ask that one.
I'm not gonna ask him. I'm not gonna ask him. I'll have to ask the Toronto equivalent, which is Chris Callahan, who's
Fair enough. Yeah,
who's remarkably
I
chill.
asked, right. Yeah, I was gonna say I asked the New Jersey equivalent, which is Tom Schlatter of like the Assistant and You and I and all those bands,
Yeah, yeah.
and he was in Black Heights, and also very chill, very cool guy. But I remember when I broke veganism, being like, oh, and I was 28 years old, 27 years old, and being like, oh no, should I tell Tom? Like, I don't know if I should tell him. And then we went out to eat together. I was like, yeah, I'm not vegan anymore, and I'm just vegetarian now. And he's like, oh, it's your belly. I was like, okay, cool. Like, we're still friends.
Yeah, I remember having to call friends when I broke because I didn't want them to hear about it on the internet first. It was
Right. Oh, I definitely had that conversation with a couple edge breakers
it's
who
an
would think,
awkward phone call to make.
oh, I'm sure. And like I said, like I mean, I didn't say this. I was always the straight edge kid who like did not give a shit. Like I was just doing it for me. Like even from a young age, like I was never like, what the fuck, you're not straight edge anymore. So like people would tell me, I'd be like, oh, okay. We still like gonna go skateboard, or we still gonna like watch WWF or something? Like what's going on now? But
Well,
yeah,
that's your positive side of straight edge. Now let's hear about your more militant side. Actually, have you ever hung out with Ultramantis Black?
I actually haven't. We've definitely like exchanged like an email or two,
Yeah,
and we both have like mutual friends who are like, oh, you guys got to meet each other.
yeah,
And but we've never met or anything. He's a guy who I definitely want to wrestle, but like I didn't kind of start, quote unquote breaking out until somewhat recently,
hmm
and he started focusing on his band around the same time.
yeah.
So I never got to do that, and like that's something I really hope gets to happen at some point in the future.
Yeah, like it's funny because like that record is once again a militant straight edge vegan hardcore
Oh
record
yeah,
in a
great
'90s kind of
record
mold.
too.
Oh, great record!
I remember when that came out being like, holy shit, that's not what I thought this would be like. And I loved it.
I heard rumors that some members may or may not be in Piss Jeans as well, so that explains why
I,
there's. Go on.
I was just saying, I've definitely heard that as well.
Yeah, so I think that could explain why there's also an additional sonic power to Ultramantis Black.
Right, right.
Um, so actually, did you ever see those guys? Because those guys were wrestling too in the early days of Chikara. Some of those dudes.
Oh, yeah, I've seen Piss Jeans a bunch of times. I never got to see, I know one of them, I don't think it's a secret. I know one of them was Mr. Zero in Chikara,
I think he's pretty
but
open about that, and
yeah,
like I
right?
don't.
I thought so.
Yeah, I think he's retired. He's hung up the boots, as it were.
Right,
So I
right.
think he's open about it now.
Um, yeah, I was never like way into Chikara. I've gone to a couple of their shows as I got older and stuff, and it's cool. But I was always like going to CZW shows and things like that. So I never got to see him wrestle, but like I've seen Piss Jeans 3 or 4 times probably. Um, I've never gotten to like hang out with them or talk to them, so like I have no real stories about them and wrestling and me and etc.
Well, and that's something I wanted to get into too, but because it's on the East Coast of the United States, and it might not
Uh-huh.
be as much like this now as it used to be. But I remember like when I first got back into like when I first like really started getting into wrestling, like mid 2000s, early 2000s. You'd see online there was such like a fanaticism around like certain organizations. Like you would be a CZW kid or an ROH kid, or you'd be a Chikara person. Like was that real, or is that just like the most fanatic people on the internet that act like that?
No, I mean that was definitely like a big thing. Like I remember I used to go to Jersey All Pro wrestling shows. Like, I was never as into them, but they were close. So I would go to them, and they were good though. And I would always see a guy, and he was wearing an erg shirt or I don't know, bands or like Kill Your Idols, like bands like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd be like, huh, that guy, like I've probably seen him at shows before. And then next thing I knew, like I'm playing Altered Boy shows and I'd see him and he's wearing Sammy Callahan shirts or Drake Younger shirts or other independent wrestling shirts.
Yeah.
And so I remember like one day I walk out and he goes, "Hey, nice shirt." And I didn't realize it but I'm wearing an Ultraman's black shirt. And I go, "Oh, you too." And he's wearing a Drake Younger shirt. And then we're both like, we've seen each other plenty of times. And now like we're good friends and stuff like that. And there's definitely like, I remember going to CZW shows with my buddy Pat, and he'd always be like, "Oh, there's the guys from like Mother of Mercy or some bands like that from Philly." And I didn't know that scene as well, so I'd be like, "Oh, okay, that's cool, whatever." And then like I never was a big like message board person.
Mm-hmm.
Like there was like a local one in New Jersey I was into, but I was never like a Bridge 9 kid or a VLV kid, even though I would read VLV sometimes.
For
And
the
like I'd
record,
find
you
out
have
like,
to read it for the record information, Jeff.
yeah, I guess
That
that's probably why I'm not a nerd enough for your show.
no, that's what I'm saying. Viva La Vinyl was only good for people posting trade lists. I remember that's what I used to
Oh,
read for
okay.
too. I never posted on that, but I would read it when people would post set sales and things like
See,
that.
I don't think I ever bought. I probably bought some stuff off that. I don't really remember though. But I would read like the wrestling board and stuff, and so like there was a big like. It seemed like out of nowhere, and this was like long after the Attitude Era and all that. Like all of a sudden, all these punks and hardcore kids got like die hard into wrestling,
Mm-hmm.
and not even just like indie wrestling, but they were all into WWE and stuff. But like I thought that was cool because it's like, oh, cool, I could talk to people about both now finally.
Mm-hmm.
Like I love both these things. I never understood why all these punks and hardcore kids didn't like wrestling, because especially like you've seen like What I Do with the whole deathmatch thing. It's like this is the hardcore of pro wrestling.
Mm-hmm.
And so like I never understood like why more people weren't into it, or if not death matches, but like why more people weren't into like independent wrestling. Because in my mind, there's nothing fucking cooler than that.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you see like a good wrestling match, I feel like everybody can appreciate it. Which I'm probably wrong, and I'm probably just thinking too much into it just because I like it. But it's kind of like when I hear like some new record, like, and I'm like, the hell, why doesn't everybody like this? That's how I feel when I see like a good wrestling match, where it's just like my friends into the other things I like should like this, and that's also and this, I'm not trying to segue too early, I hope. But that's also how I feel about the best show, where I'm like, why isn't everybody as in love with this as I am? So
Yeah.
I think I just get this like extreme mindset on everything where I'm like, everybody needs to like all of this because it's awesome and you're all missing out.
Well, I like, and I don't think you're wrong. Like, so much of it is just about exposure, right? Like, I think Lucha Vavoom and things like that have shown that if you put wrestling in the right context for people to be like, oh, I get this now, people love it. Or I mean, normals, not just, I mean,
Right.
like people that probably would never in their a million years dream of going to see an indie wrestling show at like a community center or at like a even like something that was marketed just as a straight wrestling show, but they would
Right.
definitely go to a Lucha Vavoom show and get totally caught up in it because like being at a live wrestling thing, it's like seeing live music. It's like there's something undeniable about the energy.
Right. And I'm a big fan of like going to anything like live. Like I love all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And so like to me it all kind of goes to the same thing. Like I think wrestling, especially like independent wrestling, is such like a cool version of this art form that the mainstream gets it on TV, and I like the mainstream product as well. I'm not trying to like put that down, but I think the independent version is like the punk version of it, and so I'm like, there's in my mind there's so many similarities between punk rock and a company like CZW or any other independent company where it's just like this is the dirty version of that, and I think it's better because people get to do more with it than they get to on, say, the radio or on TV or whatever, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, that's why, like, I feel like when I try to talk to, like, other wrestlers about punk, I'm always like, oh, man, they don't like the same stuff I do. But
Yeah.
it's the same. Like, in my mind, it's all the same. Like, a good record is just like a good like, indie show. It's dirty. It's a little bit cheaper. There's more going on, in some cases and things like that. And I just think it's like they're both such cool art forms, and I don't understand why there's not more crossover.
Mm-hmm.
Even though recently I feel like that has been happening, and it gets me excited about it. And like, I think I even told you this, maybe even at Tournament of Death, where like to me, like the coolest shit is when somebody's like, "Hey man, I really like that you come out to Poison idea." and I'm like, oh fuck yeah, Poison Idea, let's talk a little bit.
Hmm.
That makes me more excited than like, hey man, I really liked your match tonight, which is also like a great feeling, obviously. But it makes me happy when I can cross these two sections of my life. So like Tournament of Death, I'm positive I've told you this, before, was like in my mind, Tournament of Death was my WrestleMania because I'm not going to WWE. I'm not delusional or anything like that. So like I was already like having the best day of my quote pro wrestling career, and then like all of a sudden it's like I get to talk to this other dude about like all this punk music. Like this is the fucking best day all of a sudden. Like I know I just jumped way far ahead. I'm sorry about that.
No,
But
dude,
like
that's what
I
this
just
show
like
is.
whenever things like that cross for me, it's like this is the best. I love this so much. So like when you started talking to me about Poison Idea at the show before that, the H2O show,
Yeah.
it was just like, oh hell yeah, I get to talk about punk. And then the next day you're there, and I'm like, oh hell yeah, like this is even better. Like we get to talk about this all day because that was such a long day. But
Yeah, no, well, that's the thing is like, and as you said, like I love finding out that anyone in wrestling is into punk, but there's
right,
like a certain type of punk, and I guess you DIY punk, like just broadly termed
right,
DIY, like that DIY punk hardcore punk. It's a certain type of music, like Tear It Up. When I noticed your shirt was a Tear It Up shirt, at first
right,
at first I was like, what are the odds that this guy knows Tear It Up? I'm like, probably equal that he just saw this and stole the image. Like
right.
like it's just like such an improbability because it's such a that type of punk is like a very specific type of punk, and there aren't a lot of us.
Sure, yeah. And then the truth is that I asked Andy Scarpula for permission.
I know. That's what I'm saying. Like it's like not only is it a tribute to Tear It Up, it's done with complete permission
Right.
of the band. So that's and I like I think that's kind of like I had so much fun that day getting to jam out and just like talk with you. Like obviously watching everything was also for me completely because as you said, like I've watched it on video, but there's something different when you go and see something live. And
Right.
being at a TOD live is unlike anything I've ever seen in my life.
Oh
Like
yeah.
it's just a totally incredible experience on every level. Um, but we are now way ahead, way in the future, and I want to jump back to like
Sure, sure.
Black Kites because we skipped way ahead.
Yeah,
So,
right.
so Black Kites kind of forms, I guess. And where did you kind of fit in the scene of the time in New Jersey?
At that point, I was probably just going to like every basement show at that point,
Hmm.
and I was like I never stopped being into almost everything, pretty much. Like I had my little elitist days, but like I still would listen to like everything from Kill Your Idols to The Assistant and You and I and all those bands, and so I kind of became friends with Tom, who was in The Assistant, You and I, et cetera, and Black Heights later on, and we had some mutual friends through this other band called Is This Real, who I don't think they never did too much. They were like a Jersey Shore heavily political band, and that's like when I got like heavy into like a lot of political punk.
Hmm.
And so they were mutual friends with me and Tom, and then eventually Tom, I remember, was trying to start like a more straightforward hardcore band, and I wanted to do something more like what Tom is kind of known for, like the more like technical stuff.
Yeah.
But I can't play anything that well, so I was like, I want to sing for something like that. So I remember Tom was looking for that, and I got in contact with him, and then we kind of got together, and it became, like I said, it was basically just '90s straight edge vegan hardcore worship. Like we wanted to be Endeavor and Unbroken and 108 and all those bands. And so that kind of all came together. And I got excited because, like, at the time, and I'm still into it all. But that's like great when I was really, really getting into like more political stuff. Like the propaganda side of me was coming out even more than ever. And so like, I got excited to like get to write lyrics like that and get to do it with somebody like Tom, who like I loved all his old bands and everything like that. So that was really cool. And then that was the first band I was really in that got to like tour out a lot. Like
Hmm.
in between Cannonball and Black Heights, I was in this real short-lived band called the Cannamits, and we did one short week. We did one 3-day weekend, and so like I got that little taste of touring. And then we did Black Heights, and like we kind of rode Tom's coattails a little bit because he's already toured America, 3-4 times, and I think he did like 2 Euro tours by that point. So like we got to do all these cool tours, and granted, like it wasn't all just off of Tom, because we played the shows to nobody and things like that.
Yeah.
But I got to like finally go on tour for like 2 straight weeks and 3 weeks and all that, and like meet other bands and like get to like get really into like the actual touring life, I guess.
Yeah.
Nothing compared to like what like a lot of bands do. But for me, like 2 weeks at a time, like this was the fucking coolest thing in the world.
Well, that's a
And then like
legit
we got to,
tour.
yeah, exactly. And then we got to go to Europe, and I was like, what the fuck am I doing? I'm like this 24-year-old fucking idiot, and somebody else is flying me to Europe. Like this is, it blew my mind. And like that was my favorite, one of my favorite things through playing music was just like getting to sit on that plane and be like, I'm doing this because of like this music that my parents are always like, oh, it's just a bunch of screaming, or that most people would say like, oh, it's just noise. And I remember thinking that was like the wildest thing.
Yeah. That's awesome. So when you went to Europe, like was it just sort of like a straight DIY tour type thing, like playing like the typical European like youth center type shows?
Oh yeah, we did a bunch of those and squats, and then we played Fest.
Oh wow.
That was the only real big fest we got to play, I think, from what I remember.
Well, that's probably
Um,
like for that for like hardcore of a certain style. That's the biggest fest in Europe.
yeah, and like I'll be honest, like I didn't know too much about it, and so I like read up on the past lineups. I was like, holy shit, this is like a big deal.
Yeah.
And then like we didn't get to play the day, but like Meshuggah played a day, and I was like, what are we doing playing on this fest that Meshuggah's playing?
Who
Like
played
the
your
day,
day?
Comeback Kid,
Yeah.
which not for me. But
Canada's Own
I
though.
was, what's that? Oh
Canada's
yeah,
Own.
definitely.
And also
Uh,
the drummer of Millennial Reign was the drummer of
I
Comeback Kid for a minute.
I did not know that either.
Shared
Uh,
members. Well, I didn't know that you shared members with Instill till it just hit me during this conversation.
you're
So
the only person I think who even knows what you just said. And I feel like Tom would be upset with that. I have to tell him about that now. Uh, he'll
well,
probably be
Instill's a
like,
band that's come up on this podcast before too.
yeah, I've noticed that too, I think. And
Yeah,
like, I feel like I'm surprised I've never brought that up to Tom. I'll have to like text him tomorrow morning or something now.
yeah, yeah.
But I remember being excited about Fest because we got to play with Sheer Terror. And like,
Oh,
Black Heights, if you ever hear Black Heights, like from what I described it, we're nothing like that. But
yeah.
I fucking love Sheer Terror. So we got to play with Sheer Terror and Strife that day, and both like everything in my head was just like, this is the coolest shit. I can't wait.
Yeah.
And I actually talked to Tom about this recently. Like I don't mosh much or anything like that, but when Strife played, I was like, I remember looking at Tom and be like, man, sometimes you just got to hit the pit. And I just went and moshed to Strife so hard, and probably harder than I've done it in years, and probably will ever do again. All because I got to see these guys who who aren't even still straight edge play these straight edge songs I loved in like when I was younger.
Dude, I saw Youth of Today play this weekend, and I'm not even straight edge, and I was like, "This is the coolest thing I've ever seen." Seeing a bunch of people that, well, I guess one member of the band is probably still straight edge at this point, but it was
Right.
fun. It was fun all the same. So I know I can relate. I didn't mosh
Oh, I'm
though.
glad.
I didn't mosh.
Uh,
I held it in.
I had to. They played Blistered. I had to.
Oh my, yeah, of course. Did you talk to Paul Bearer that day?
No, I don't. I've never talked to him at all. I don't think.
He would have been
He-
like the best wrestling manager who never got into wrestling.
Oh, 100%. He would especially be good in like. And now I'm gonna get nerdy on my own thing, and this is where everybody just turned the podcast off. He would have been great in like the old Puerto Rico days in the '70s
Mm-hmm.
with like the Dick Murdochs and Bruiser Brodies and stuff like that.
I also see him be kind of like a babyface Captain Lou Albano type.
That is true, but I think he might be too offensive to be that
Yeah, that's
in
true.
America.
Well,
Which is why I think he fit into Puerto Rico, where they were just dropping like the N bomb all the time.
you're right. Maybe he would do better in Puerto Rico. Yeah, you're right. Than North America right now. He does have a bit of a tongue on him.
Right, exactly.
Did you meet him so did you hang out with him or talk to him?
No, I definitely didn't talk to him. I probably like walked by him and went, "Oh my god, that's Paul Bear." That's about it.
Yeah, I think when we played, our merch table was beside Scarhead. I'm trying to remember who was on the other side, but it was just like I could not imagine a more diverse row of bands.
That's awesome.
And it was like And I have Scarhead Records, and stuff. So I'm like staying beside
Sure.
Lord Ezak, and I was like super stoked to see him. So it was a very like fun day for me. But like that is, like as far as playing in a band, that must have felt like kind of the apex. Where did you go from there with Black Kites?
After the Euro tour, I think we might have like played a few more like small weekends. I think we didn't do anything really after that, and we kind of just broke up after a while. Because before that we did a bunch of like small East Coast tours and like down south a little, or no, more up north and out to like the Chicago area.
Mm-hmm.
But I think Europe was probably the last like full like 2-3 week tour we did actually. And then the drummer moved to Braddock, Pennsylvania, and he started doing Hounds of Hate and oh man, Cream. The other band was called
Oh yeah,
Cream, and
yeah.
they're both awesome. And so like he kind of moved out that way and started doing that more. And the guitarist was kind of like working on getting his life to go to like upstate New York with his new fiance, who I think might have just been a girlfriend at the time. Um, everybody was just kind of getting real busy, and like for me, like I kind of started doing more with the wrestling thing because I had started wrestling by that point. Um, so like it was kind of like it just didn't make sense to keep doing it. So like we kind of just broke up, everybody on good terms and things like that. And that was kind of it. And then shortly later, I started playing bass or I started the Altered Boys with this guy Ray, and I played bass for that. And we would just get together and write songs, and then we just kind of recruited a bunch of people and had a band.
What's the deal with Ride the Fury Records?
The guy I mentioned before, my best friend Pat Garrity,
Yeah.
Ride the Fury was his thing, and
What
it
a
started.
label!
He just wanted. What's that?
It's a crazy like you look at like the bands that he put out. It's like an incredible array of
Oh
different
yeah,
types of
he
bands.
Pat is like he's my best friend, and some of his musical choices are very they're not mine, and he knows that, and we've argued about that. Even today, we argued about things, and
But he's got an
uh,
ear, right? Like he's like like even stuff that
yeah,
I
like
that not isn't my style of music. He's definitely picking bands that are of the top tier in their genres.
yeah, he knows like what he likes and stuff. He always just put out stuff that he kind of liked.
Yeah.
And like Ride the Fury started because he just wanted to put out a couple records, and so he put out the first Black Kites record because like we were friends, and he was a big fan of like Tom's old bands and things like that, and he liked what we were doing, so he put that out. And then he did another LP for this band called Troublemaker from New Jersey, and they're very underrated. Like I thought they were awesome.
I don't even know
And
that band.
after that, what's that?
I don't even know that band. I gotta check them out.
Yeah, I don't think they did 2 7 inches, and then they did an LP on Ride the Fury, and I think they broke up maybe even before the record came out. If I could be mistaken on that one.
Wow.
But they're awesome, and I think you'd be into them too.
Mm-hmm.
Very fast, like just fucking super pissed off stuff. And then he just started getting into doing like cassettes, and when he got to do cassettes, it was cheaper on him. So pretty much he's like, "Oh, I like this band. I'm gonna hit them up and do a tape for him." And he just started doing tapes for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember a lot of times I'd be like, "Dude, why are you doing this?" And he's like, "I'm friends with them. They're cool." I'm like, all right, man, whatever works for you. And then other times he would be doing tapes that like I'd be way into and nobody else would like. So it's like, what the fuck do I know anyway? But no, Pat's a good dude, and he just always kind of just did what he liked and stuff like that. And after a while, he kind of got tired of doing the record label, so he just stopped because he only just wanted to do it when it was fun for him. And now he's actually working on doing like enamel pins now.
Okay.
And you'll be into it because the first one he's been showing me, the first one coming out is the Shockmaster helmet.
Whoa.
I'll
That's
hit you up when that
awesome.
comes out because I don't know much more about it yet, honestly. But yeah, he's been sending me pictures and stuff, and it's sick.
That's very cool. Well, yeah, no, that's a pin after my own heart.
Right, exactly.
So yeah, I guess that leads in perfectly to talk about wrestling. So you said you started training. When did you first start training wrestling?
I started training in 2009, I want to say 2008, 2009, and the reason I'm kind of like I kind of blank on that is because I was doing it for a while, and right when I got booked for like my first like 2 matches, I broke my knee playing a Black Kite show, in a basement to probably about 10 kids just jumping around, and next thing my knee just pops out, and
And people say
I get
wrestling's
up.
dangerous.
Yeah, exactly. I got up, I finished the set, like I stood up, walked around playing the set, like it kind of hurt, but I was good and I was walking around. And then by the end of the night, I remember I had trouble getting up the stairs. I drove about 40 minutes home and I get to my driveway and I was living with my parents at the time and I couldn't get out of my car and I had to call my mom and be like, I think we need to go to the hospital. Like I was good and now all of a sudden like I sat down for a while and I can't move. Like I literally can't put any weight. And turns out somehow just from jumping or like crouching or whatever when you're jumping around like screaming and all that stuff, my kneecap popped out of place and turned to the side.
Oh
And when
shit.
it did that, it broke part of the patella, which is your actual kneecap, and I tore a bunch of ligaments in the back of my knee. So I had to cancel wrestling, and then or the matches. I had to cancel the matches I had booked, which was fucking heartbreaking because it's what I was training for. I was finally going after this childhood dream, and then I wanted to like lose some weight before I came back to wrestling. So I lost a bunch of weight, got back into it, and then I had my first match in March of 2010. And that was probably like right in the middle of Black Heights going on.
So who did you train with? Like what was your like
Um,
I mean like how did you get in how was that for approaching that whole process for you?
Actually, I feel like I'm just name dropping a bunch of my friends now. He'll really appreciate this because he's a big fan of the show. But in my name, Devin Walby. I posted some on MySpace being like, "Hey, like, does anybody know anything about getting into wrestling?" Because I knew nothing, and this was
Yeah.
on like MySpace or something, like a bulletin or something.
Yeah.
And I've been friends with Devin since we were like real young, and he not like too young, but young enough. He hits me up. He goes, "Dude, you realize like I'm friends with a bunch of like semi-pro wrestlers, right?" I was like, "No, dude, I had no idea. Like, what do I do?" So he put me in touch with a guy named Corey Havoc,
Mhm.
who he's heavy into like a lot of fat wreck bands, and so like that was the closest I probably knew at the time to like a wrestler into punk. So that was cool to me.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
like
That's
I started
definitely
training.
cool to me if because you listen to the show, Jeff. You know that's definitely cool with me.
Yeah, exactly. So like I started going to this company in New Jersey called NWS.
Yeah.
Super carny and super small time stuff. And I would show up early, set up chairs, set up the ring, do whatever needed to be done. And then Corey Havoc and a guy named Nicky Oceans, mostly those two, a couple others, Joey Janela, who's kind of breaking out with independent wrestling. He's
Yeah.
huge right now in
Yeah.
indies. They kind of all trained me. And then, like, during the show, I would do security guard or do tickets or whatever needed to be done. And then at the end of the night, I'd pack up the ring and go home. And I repeated that over and over again. And eventually, Corey Havoc kind of told the promoter, like, hey, I think we could put him in the match, just make like, a multi man match and kind of hide me a little bit and let me do some things. And that's how I kind of got into all that, which was mind blowing to me at the time that that was even a thing I could do.
Hmm. Well, I guess from there, you're kind of like living this double life at that point. And I know when MVP was on, he talked about how difficult that was.
Oh, well, at the time, I was definitely focusing more on punk and hardcore and things like that. Um, and like, because wrestling, when I first started, I would really only wrestle probably like once or twice a month, which is not the right way to do it at all. Since then, I've upped my schedule where I'm wrestling almost every weekend, if not every single weekend, a couple times. But yeah, like the first year or two, I was only probably wrestling once a month. So like punk and hardcore definitely took precedence. And then Altered Boys started, and like we were doing tours and we were doing plenty of things like that, and it was getting busy, and like I kind of was able to juggle them. I wrestled out of state a couple times with that, but I was really focusing more on Altered Boys. And then once that broke up, it was like, all right, I'm going to put everything into wrestling, and that's 100% what I did. Where like once Alter Boys was done, like, and I miss playing in bands, and every once in a while, I'm like, I reach out to a few people, like, hey, let's do this. But by the way, I have the worst schedule ever because wrestling's more important to me at this point in my life, and like it's going real well for me, so I'm going to keep doing this. So like we can only practice on Tuesdays, and then we'll never play a show, and I'm not a good bandmate at this point in my life. Um, but yeah, once Alter Boys ended, it was like full bore. Like, let me just do this fucking wrestling thing finally.
Yeah. So yeah. So when you start doing the wrestling, I guess before we get into the wrestling stuff, when did you first become aware of CZW?
That was late high school. Um, actually, it was probably right after high school. It was early college, like 2006, 2005, 2006 is when I started getting really into it. And then 2007 is when me and my buddy Pat were like, we could just go to this, and we started just going to a bunch of shows and things like that.
Mm-hmm. So,
And
sorry, go.
before that, though, like, I'm sorry, no, you go ahead.
No. I thought you were done, so I was going to interject. Go on.
I was just gonna say, like, I got into like when I was in like early high school is when I started. I found out like what death matches were. Like most people through ECW and through Cactus Jack and Mankind and whatever else you want to call them, and that's kind of like what got me into FMW and then later Big Japan, and then eventually me and my buddy were just like, whoa, this happens in Philadelphia too, and that's how we found like CZW and out in the Midwest we found IWA Mid South, my bad, and so that's kind of like when we started realizing like death matches happen more than just in Japan, and they happen like now because we were always watching videos from like the late '90s and stuff like that. So yeah, that's like we got into CZW because we found out they were the death match company that was close to us, and we wanted to see some of that stuff live.
Mm-hmm. So, what was the first CZW show you ever went to?
It was Night of Infamy 2007. Only real death match thing I remember there being was a barbed wire boards match. Actually, and I think there was like a somewhat kind of home run derby type match too earlier in the show. But yeah, it was Night of Infamy, and the main event was Danny Havoc and Drake Younger versus the Naptown Dragons in the barbed wire type match. And like weird story, and in November I main event my first CZW show, and it's Night of Infamy against two guys that the Naptown Dragons trained.
Oh, wow.
So it's
Full
yeah, it's all
circle.
kind of come this yeah, it's this weird full circle of weird violence.
When you first started training wrestling, was that like kind of what you want? Did you know you wanted to do that, or was it like just you wanted to learn sort
By
of?
the time I started training, I kind of like I like death matches a lot. Like, I loved them at the time, but I always wanted to be that guy who could do more than just death matches. I didn't want to be just like because there's different kinds of death match guys, in my opinion, and like some of them are guys who you only want to see do the death match stuff. But then there's some of them like guys like Danny Havoc and Masada and Matt Tremont who they can fucking go and they can wrestle, but they're so good at the deathmatch thing, and that's become like the bread and butter, and that's always what I wanted to be. So when I first started training wrestling, I wanted to do it, in my opinion, what was the right way, and so I didn't do my first like violent, bloody thing until I think 3 years into wrestling, and I did like a couple thumbtack matches. But I didn't want to be just the deathmatch guy. And granted, like at this point, I'm much more known for that, and that's more what people want to see me do. But I'm still like satisfied that like I know if you put me in a wrestling match, I can do it, and I do it every weekend. Like I'd probably do maybe one death match a month. In the summer, it picks up a little bit because that's when everybody starts booking death match shows. But I still wrestle like every weekend, so like I like that I can wrestle, and I don't have to just be another guy who's just gonna like go out there and swing some stuff and bleed a lot.
Yeah, like I think that's the thing about that H2O show the night before TOD is like
Yeah,
seeing a bunch of you guys like just be able to work something or be able to sorry not to steal parlance or anything
oh
but
yeah, go ahead.
like be able to do a show where there's like there's no blood, there's no
Right,
swearing, there's like
very family friendly.
very family friendly, and then to do something that's like the complete opposite. Like I don't know too many punk bands like or hardcore bands that could go from playing like a kid's birthday party to playing like CB's in 91,
Right.
93 maybe. Like it
I
just
guess I guess that's one of the differences I didn't point out in
yeah.
punk and wrestling.
Yeah.
Where like if there's a deathmatch wrestler who can't do that stuff, I kind of am like, all right, you're probably not the best wrestler. Just my like opinion. That's not what I want to see anybody do. But with punk, it's like I don't think I'd want to watch a band be able to play a kid's party the
No.
next day.
No, I guess that's what but I think that's also, but maybe like, you build up the skill sets being in a band that you could play in another band and still know how to work a crowd in the
There,
same and
yeah.
maybe that's the similarity,
Sorry.
but you're right. It's like that was like the disconnect between those two nights for me as someone who was just a casual observer
Right,
was
right.
was unbelievable. What's it like, competing in that where you're like going from one world to the complete opposite? And you say you do it at least one other time a month, almost every month, right?
Yeah,
So
give or take.
yeah,
I love it. Like, and I'll be honest with you, like I'm not a tough guy at all in real life, and like I know like people who watch that Vice documentary or who watch Tournament of Death, I'm probably a horrifying person, but I feel like I come across on here and in my real life as a nice enough guy. Um, but I still kind of like in wrestling the way that I get perceived, where like people see the bloody stuff, and then I show up to the family show, and people will be like, "Oh wow, you're a lot nicer than I thought." But like I was scared of you. And then like when I wrestle, I can get into that like character that's like, yeah, motherfucker, like I cut myself and bleed and all this stuff, but now I'm here and I'm just gonna be like this badass like ass kicker.
yeah,
And like I like that stigma that kind of comes along with it, as long as it's not the stigma of deathmatch guys can't wrestle, they can only bleed, which is a huge stigma and I disagree with it entirely. But like I like being able to go from one to the next because I want to be a versatile performer. I don't want to just be a one trick pony kind of deal and just a guy who's going to get hit with a bunch of glass and light tubes. I like that I can go and like I'll do comedy matches. Like I've done a couple shows that were like super charity shows, super like not even PG rated, just like straight up like G rating, like made for kids. And I'll just do straight up comedy matches, and I love doing that stuff too. But then at like that H2O show, I wrestled a guy named Tony Deppen, who I think is like phenomenal at just straight technical wrestling, just putting together a good match. And I thought we had a killer match that day. And then the next day I went to Tournament of Death and me and Matt Tremont attempted to kill each other. And like I like that I can do all of that stuff. And I like knowing in my mind that like some people might only see me as like this deathmatch guy, but I know I can do other things.
yeah. Well, like that, I so do I, and I think that's as a wrestling fan, I think watching TOD specifically, but it goes for a lot of deathmatch stuff. But like when you see people that are really good at it, it's great wrestling. Like the promo
Right.
work in CZW is I think better than most like the quote unquote major companies or more mainstream companies. Like
Oh
the
yeah,
it's
I
sorry.
think no, I was just gonna say like I want anybody out there who's a wrestling fan to just go and YouTube a Matt Tremont promo, and you can't tell me that he's not as good, if not better, than anybody on TV.
Or Danny
In
Havoc. I
Yeah,
love his
him
promo.
too. Like
Yeah.
Danny Havoc is one of my favorite promo guys too, and like he's another guy like his promos can go from like dead serious to like almost comical, like because he's a real life like Danny Havoc in real life. And this isn't like a secret. A lot of people know this. He's a fucking genius, and he's a really funny dude. And like he just puts it all together so well. So like his promos can be all over the place, and they're so good. But in my opinion, I think Matt Tremont is the best promo in wrestling right now. Whether it's WWE, whether it's ROH or any independent or CZW, anything. I think Tremont can go toe to toe with anybody in a promo.
Hmm. Yeah. I kind of like. I don't know. It's funny because like I went on live audio wrestling and we did a review of TOD 9, and so
Okay.
just watching everyone's promos in between, it's like, oh god, it's like it's not like just now. It's like right back. There's like always been, and Dean Ambrose, came through
Oh hell
CZW.
yeah.
So it's like it's always been a company that's not. It's not as simple as it's like, oh, it's backyard wrestling. It's like it's not backyard wrestling at all. It is real
Right.
wrestling.
And that's the problem. Like deathmatch, a lot of people see deathmatch as just dudes who just bleed and cut themselves and all that stuff. But like you said, when it's done well, it's really good wrestling. Just like when it's done bad, it's terrible. But when a lucha match is done bad, it's terrible. When a tactical match is done bad, it's terrible. Like and to me, it's just another facet of wrestling, and I love it. I get if it's not your thing, but I think it's not fair to call it garbage wrestling or backyard wrestling or not wrestling or at all. You know what I mean? Um, it's wrestling like it's so subjective and like nobody can say what wrestling really is because like if you want to just watch wrestling you'd be at high school amateur matches all the time and nobody pays to go see that stuff. And like I'm sorry to kind of go on this big tear of this stuff or of this kind of rant, but like in
Dude, I
my
love
opinion it's
it.
like
Go, go.
but yeah, in my opinion, like wrestling is all about entertaining, and if somebody wants death matches to entertain them, good. Like here's some stuff for them. If they want comedy, here's guys like Greg Excellent and Dick Justice for them. And there's different things for everybody in wrestling. And that's, I think, another reason why I'm like, more people should be into independent wrestling, because you can find all of these. I just don't think it's fair to say something isn't wrestling. And while I was doing that rant, I was trying to find a way to bring it back to punk, but I can't really figure out a way. I'm sorry.
Don't worry. No, I don't know. I guess it's kind of like, it's funny because I had this conversation with a friend who's a wrestler, and I told him I was working on this project, like when I first started working on the doc, and
Right.
he's like, a mainstream kind of wrestler, and he was like, I don't like that stuff. That's to me is garbage wrestling. And I said to him, like, I remember seeing this interview with Bruce Dickinson from Iron Maiden, and he said in this interview, he's like, you look at punk and these guys that were playing punk music, and to us that was disgusting. Like, we just dismissed it out of hand because, like, these were guys that just showed up and
Right.
just played in their street clothes, and they didn't, like, we were working forever learning these chords, and we put something into the show and blah blah blah. And I'm like, that to me is completely analogous for this. I'm like, you're like the Rush of wrestling, but there's got to be room for the agnostic fronts.
I could agree with that. I love
And
that.
he conceded the
analogy.
point. So
There you go.
so I think it does work. So we brought it back to punk right there, Jeff.
There you go. Thank you very much for doing that for me.
Well, and also bringing it back to punk, you come out to Poison Idea. What was like the entrance music process like for you, or which ones have you also used? Because I imagine, like, you're such a deep head that to me is like the ultimate fantasy, is picking out your entrance music.
Poison Idea is probably the deepest I kind of have. Like, my first music ever was River Runs Red by Life of Agony, because I was trying to find something because I was only doing family shows. So I wanted to find something that doesn't curse.
Yeah.
And it's somewhat, you could kind of make out like what's going on, and it wasn't 45 seconds long. So I came out to River Runs Red for a while, and I loved doing that. And then I did, I don't know if there was anything between that, but then I started using Malfunction by the Cro-Mags. And the reason for that was because I was wrestling at the Gathering of the Juggalos. And I don't know if you're familiar with Kevin Gill at all.
Yep.
If not, I was gonna say, I think you should get him on here. He'd be fucking awesome for this.
I'm a big fan of his podcast, and like,
yeah, his podcast. I tell everybody to listen to his podcast and this podcast. Like, they're my favorites. And not to like nerd out on you on your own show, but like that's legit. Like, I recommend you two to everybody.
Well, that's
and
awesome.
I think you
good company.
You need to. Yeah, definitely. You got to get him on here, because he could definitely tell some stories of like the old New York hardcore days.
Absolutely.
But now he books wrestling at the Gathering of the Juggalos, and he's like real deep into that scene. But
which to me is like fascinating, because he's the bridge,
Oh, hell yeah!
And also, now this is where I'm going to nerd out to you on your episode of my show, unfortunately. But have you ever seen old footage of Ringworm?
I'm sure I have.
Like, where they have like makeup on, where like the Human Furnace is wearing like face paint.
Okay, yeah, and I know what you're talking about.
I kind of wonder if that's what the Insane Clown Posse saw and was the basis for their clown paint, because it looked weirdly like it. I'm like, it would have been like Midwest, maybe. I don't know. Not that I'm saying those guys are punk or hardcore guys, but
right. I would love to hear you talk to Kevin about that. Ask him, because he would have some insight. I don't think that is the basis.
I don't think so.
I would love to hear that conversation, though.
But Jeff, how sick would it be if that were the case?
Incredible.
Oh my God.
But like, because of Kevin, and I've kind of found this bridge like between punk and like, I know people are gonna be mad at me, but there's a similarities between punk and the fucking Juggalos.
Mm-hmm.
And like, I'm not a Juggalo, and like, I've tried to listen to them after seeing how cool that ICP and Kev and all them have treated me. It's not for me.
Mm-hmm.
But
Homies is a sick song though, right? Homies.
Oh fuck yeah! That's a great song.
That song's killer. That song is awesome.
There's a couple songs where I'll give it to him, but overall it's not for me.
Yeah, okay.
But I was wrestling at the Gathering, and Kevin Gill was like, "What did you come out to?" And I go, "Poison Idea." Or no, at the time I started coming out to Poison Idea, he goes, "Oh, I don't have that." He goes, anything else? I go, I can come out to like Chromax. He goes, let me run to my car. I'll go get Age of Quarrel right now. So he runs to his car. He goes, all right, I got you coming out to Malfunction. I was like, all right, that works for me. So I did that for a while, too, solely because that's what KG had in his car at the time. And but so like I started coming out to Malfunction for a while, and then I got back and I kept doing it for a while, and then I went back to Poison Idea because I fucking love coming out to Plastic Bomb.
Yeah, it's a
But yeah,
sick
like
one. It is like an amazing. I never thought of that one as like it wasn't one of my fantasy picks, but then when you came out to it, I'm like, oh, this is perfect.
oh, it's a perfect song to come out to. It's not too short because that's my biggest problem. Is I need to find stuff that's not too short,
Mm-hmm.
or it's not too like crappy recordings. You know what I
Yes,
mean?
yes.
So like that fits perfectly where it's like dirty, but it's like you could tell there's music going on here. It's not coming out to like Disclose or something.
Yeah, the Void demo or something.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, so like my whole thing with picking music, especially with like the punk variety, has always just kind of been like, all right, it's got to be like long enough and not just blast beats going on.
Yeah. Yep. Well, you brought up
Just
Kevin Gill, and that leads into something else I wanted to talk to you about, which is like there is this weird, like kind of like energy that runs between punk and wrestling that keeps connecting it to me. Like going right back to the Dictators and the bass players fanzine about pro
sure,
wrestling they
yeah,
used to do, and the lead singer of Vom used to write about wrestling for Rolling Stone magazine, like right to kind of Burning Spirits, like being named after a Bruiser Brody quote
right, right.
and stuff. So, why do you think that is? Like, and how many people? I guess you run into it a lot, I would imagine.
Well, like people who are into both and
Yeah,
things like
well,
that.
I guess like people in wrestling that are punk is what I'm.
Oh, I mean, it bums me out because you don't run into it as much as you would hope.
Maybe
Like
I don't
for
mean to like
me,
tear it up necessarily, but I mean like
no, no, I
broadly
know what you mean.
speaking, you know.
I think, and I think it kind of goes back to like I said before with like the Ultimate Warrior. Like we just kind of have this disposition for like something that's like a little more extreme. So instead of just watching like football, we're gonna watch dudes like body slam each other and in my case go through panes of glass and things like that. And instead of just listening to classic rock or just like pop music, we're gonna find stuff that's fucking loud and angry because like wrestling's an angry thing as much as like I don't think it makes people more violent or anything, but like punk, it's an angrier output, it's an angrier art form, and I think that's kind of like there's a lot of similarities there that I think some people pick up on. So like I'll meet wrestlers all the time who like they might not be into like what I'm into as far as punk goes, but they're into like Epitaph or Fat Wreck, and to them that's still an extreme, and it is an extreme thing compared to most things. Um, so they found their two versions of some kind of extreme part of culture, and I think that's what draws a lot of people to things. And like a lot of wrestlers are fucking weirdos. And you got to be a little weird and a little off to want to wrestle, and you have to be a little weird and a little off to be into punk,
Yep.
or at least in my opinion, I think so. Um, so like, I think that's kind of like where it kind of comes, and like, then you have the select few like me and KG, and there's a dude Mike McCarthy from Boston who wrestles, who he's got fucking slapshot tattoos and all this stuff,
Was he
and
in Poor Excuse? Was he in a band?
yes,
Yeah.
yeah, he was in the Poor Excuse, and he did For the Worse after that.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, he's probably the only other dude besides for KG who can go as deep as I think I go when it comes to punk and wrestling. And fuck, Mike could probably go deeper than I do even.
Well, you're forgetting about
Um,
Brookside.
oh yeah, of course, that was insane. Listen to him on this show.
Well, I think the fallout,
Um,
like finding out. Sorry, the fallout. We'll get into the fallout in a second. Go on. Sorry.
no, I think I was just gonna wrap up like where it's like we're a bunch of fucking weirdos who like to fake fight each other while also getting really hurt. And we're a bunch of fucking weirdos who like this loud, obnoxious music that most people hate.
Well, I want to talk about the fallout from the Robbie Brookside episode and like Andy and like
Oh, dude, that was the best.
I know that whole story, but we'll get into it in a second. But will you indulge me for 1 second, Jeff, about why I kind of think the two might be so intertwined?
Okay.
I think both of them point out the absurdity of our current human condition. Like hardcore and punk is very much, critical of the entire idea of, the celebrity and the musician and the person being on the stage. And I think wrestling at the same time, but still embracing it, like music, like punk is still part of pop music and stuff. So it still embraces it.
Sure.
And I think wrestling at the same time points out the absurdity in sports, but still embraces it and still is a sport, but like also it's like a cynical take on sports in the same way punk is a cynical take on rock and roll or rock.
Yeah, I think that's an awesome point, and that's a great point. And I feel like you probably put that so much better than I ever could. And that speaks to who has gotten hit with a chair more times.
Well, unfortunately, I've hit myself in the head with a pop can trying to emulate you guys more times than I should have. I
was probably doing that before I was getting paid to do it anyway.
Yeah, well, I don't think I was getting paid when I was doing it either, Jeff, to be honest with you. But I think that the Sandman's entrance, speaking of great entrances, was inspired a lot of silly moves on my part at different times. But I definitely want to talk about, like post that Robbie Brookside episode, like it's amazing hearing these stories about like, my friend Mark Schubert, who, was in Wasted Time and stuff, like, finding out that Robbie's been buying records off him on Discogs and connecting with him after that, or like Andy from Tear It Up going to that. You guys went to that NXT show or something?
It was NXT. Yeah, I went with him. It was NXT in Asbury Park, and I think it's his cousin, or I think it was his cousin who was doing like, like load in or something like that. And so Andy texted him and was like, "Hey man, like I really want to meet Robbie Brookside just to talk about punk. Like I won't be annoying or whatever." So he finally gets up during like intermission and he goes back and he comes back and he's so fucking pumped. And he's like, I go like, "What happened?" And he's like, "Dude, I fucking started talking to Robbie Brookside and somehow like Tear It Up came up," and he goes, "Oh, I have that fucking split with ETA," or like he's like got the records and all this stuff. And like I think next thing I know, like Andy's sending him Tear It Up shirts in the mail.
Yeah. No, I think like, it's so funny because like that's the thing is like, you said Mike, from A Poor Excuse and For the Worst, like obviously deep head, but like yourself, like that's that type of punk, and Ultramantis Black too, like
right, yeah.
Like deep roots for that guy as well. So I've always found it like, especially once I kind of like, stopped worrying and admitted that I loved wrestling and in like my early 20s, and just embraced it wholeheartedly.
Right.
It's like, like you're like, oh shit, yeah, Gordon Soley Motherfuckers. That's like a whole band dedicated to pro wrestling.
Right. Yeah, and I don't think I found them till a little bit later. And I think it was because like I think it was the guitars of Altered Boys. It was 100% the guitarists of Altered Boys who showed me them, and I don't think he knew who Gordon Soley was. And I was like, wait, what? That's the name of this band? Like, this is fucking awesome. And I fell in love with that right away because it was like everything I ever liked about anything.
I know it's like songs about murdering Eric Bischoff. It's like this, like it's very inside.
Yeah, a bunch of like a song that references Mr. Fuji's Salt. Like it was incredible.
Well, and it's also Tony to me. He had a public access show with Wedge from H100s and Nine Shocks Terror. That was like it was kind of like Stranglemania before there was Stranglemania.
Really?
Yeah, like it was.
I don't think I knew about.
Sorry, go on.
No, I'm just saying I don't think I knew about that.
Yeah, it's like just them cutting their own audio commentary tracks over like wrestling clips and just being like crazy people. I've never seen it, but from what I've heard,
that's awesome.
Yeah, like it's I gotta find that. Like that's one of those things that has to be unearthed for the betterment of our community.
Oh, I would love to see that.
So I've kept you for a super long time, buddy, and I know you got to work tomorrow, and I got to get up super early with these kids too. And but I just wanted to like, I want to do a part 2 with you, so we can do a part 2 at some point in the future.
I'm glad I wasn't too boring to make you not say that to somebody for once.
There's been a couple. If you go through the archives, there's been a couple.
I'm pretty sure you say almost every episode.
Almost.
In my head, like. I think I thought about this like yesterday, knowing we were going to do this today. I was like, I'm going to be the first one he doesn't say that to. And then I got it. So I'm just like.
No, you wouldn't have been the first either way. You wouldn't have.
I know that. I'm exaggerating to a point. But No, like I told you, like in my head, like the whole time I was like, fuck, like I'm gonna suck at this. Nobody wants to hear me ramble. And like I had a great time. I hope it came across
Oh,
okay. I
dude, it's
hope
been
people enjoy
amazing.
it.
Oh, it's been incredible. It's been like so much fun. And I don't know why you thought it wouldn't go well. Like I knew this would go well because number one, uh, I've seen, your Discogs, and number two, uh, I've seen you wrestle. So I knew this was going to be amazing.
Fair. I
Uh,
don't know. I guess I just like despite doing that, I'm like I'm not as cool as like past guests you because I remember when we first started talking about it. I think you had like Worcester on, and I was like, I can't go after that. And then like I'm seeing all these other people, and I'm like, where the fuck do I fit in with this? And then here we are, and I had a great time doing it.
oh, that's awesome. Well, I can't let you go though because you've led into what I want to talk about before I let you
Yeah,
go.
of
I should
course.
say. John Worster, you, my friend, have been immortalized on a best show record. Um,
Yeah, that was probably the coolest thing I've ever done.
well, I
Fuck
guess
going to Europe.
I think for me, my career highlights have been all best show related, and Daniel Bryan using Generation as
Right.
entrance
I
music.
remember you telling me all about that.
Whew,
That's
whoosh.
sick.
Whoosh. I bring that up a lot as well. You probably heard that a couple times also on the show as well as in person.
Yeah.
But when did you first hear about the best show?
Man, I might have even been in middle school at the time. Or no, I was probably a freshman. I don't know. I was really young, and they used to do that Smash or Trash, which
Yeah.
I don't think he's done that in a long, long time.
No.
And a buddy of mine's joke band was on that, and so like he was pushing on everybody, like you gotta listen. And I started listening, and I was like, this is a fucking weird show. And like I got into it, but like I didn't follow it. And then like later on, I
What
got
was
really
his
into W.
band? Maybe I heard that
Uh,
one.
they were called Waffle Stomper.
Oh, okay. Maybe I did
Com-
hear that one.
Complete joke band, and like it was funny at the time for like a bunch of young high school kids.
Tyson
And
Dronicus was one too on one of
were
those.
they really?
Yeah, I can remember. Like I don't know if they ever did it, but I remember Mike Simonetti because remember he used to be one of the guys that would call in like
Yeah,
for
yeah.
and he was like, oh, I want to put this band Tyson Dronicus for Smash or Trash.
I don't remember that. I
Yeah.
believe it, but I don't. But yeah, so I remember like listening to it and being like, "This is a cool show," but like I didn't really follow it because like I'm young and like I'm not going to listen to the radio every Tuesday.
Hmm.
And then as I got older and started like listening to WFMU and getting into like the weirder side of anything audio related, I remember listening to WFMU and I was listening to this call and it was a Worcester call, obviously. And I was like, what the fuck? Like, is this real? Like, what is going on? And then I kind of figured out what it was as it was going on. And then I started putting it together like, oh, I've heard this show before. And then next thing I know, like, I'm obsessed with everything that Tom Sharpling and John Worcester and everything on the best show and all that. And I've been listening ever since that.
Yeah, like it's one of those weird things that like the first time you hear it, and it's always the Worcester call. Like that's got to be like
Oh, yeah,
that's like the bait on the hook. Um,
definitely.
but yeah, like it's always that moment where you hear it for the first time. I find, or you play it for someone, and they're like, "Is this real?"
Right.
What?
And I've played it for so many people. Like, I'm sure you've done probably the same where it's like, that's what you put on in the band sometimes, and
Yep.
half the band doesn't know what it is, or in my case, multiple times, nobody did, and it'd be like, wait a minute, is this guy prank calling this other guy, or are they in on this, or like, and nobody knows what's going on, and
Yep.
then next thing you know, like everybody fucking loves it, and then Altered Boys has a song named after the New Bridge Nudge, which is how we did that. We sampled the best show. And then a buddy of ours, Reed, used to do a show on WFMU called Distort Jersey City.
Hmm.
And so he got the record to Tom. And next thing I know, Tom's emailing me asking if we want to play the music for the hardcore side of the Gary the Squirrel 7-inch.
Which is so
And,
cool.
yeah. And I was going to say, like, I know, like, being into punk and stuff, you're not supposed to have like this celebrity worship.
Hmm.
And I don't think I ever punished Tom. And I don't think like anything like that. But in my mind, I was like, holy shit, I'm doing a record with Tom Sharpling, like the funniest man to ever walk the earth. Like, this is unreal to me. And like, that was like my like mark out moment, so to speak.
Yeah. Yep.
And so, like, and then like, next thing I know, like, I'm in a studio and Tom is holding a squirrel puppet doing a parody of Minor Threat over music that I just played and recorded. And I'm like, what the fuck is going on in my life? I love this so much.
How awesome is it that he used the puppet in the
Oh,
studio?
dude. when he pulled it out, I remember having to be like, dude, I'm so glad you brought that. And he goes, I can't do the voice without it. I was like, good. I'm so happy. Like, I we did like the 7 inch has 3 songs that we did,
Mm-hmm.
and he started doing one, and it was called Squirrel in the Pit, and it's about being a squirrel just moshing in a pit. And I remember as soon as it started, seeing the puppet and him just yelling these ridiculous lyrics, I fell on the floor crying, laughing immediately. And like that's like to this day, that had to be one of the most fun times I've ever had just recording anything, just because like here I am with Tom Sharpling and a puppet, and it's as funny as anything I could ever hope it would be.
Mm-hmm. Like I don't know for you because I'm not a Stern guy, but like I that's the only time I can really relate to Stern people is if I put it in the context of the best show, and like
I can see that.
like I know a lot of people that are like huge Stern fans, and like it's like they're like it's like a religion, like the way they
Oh
talk about
yeah,
it. But like and I'm like, oh, like they're like if I ever met Howard, oh my god, like I met this guy, like I met Gary the Spitter, and like it's
right,
amazing. Gary the Spitter shook my hand, and like these are like people that wouldn't get tripped out by anything, But like yeah,
right.
then I think about like how I would feel if I was in the studio with Tom. He's just fucking doing Gary the Squirrel and doing hardcore songs with me. It would be like how these people would feel if they got to meet Robin or Stuttering John or something.
Right, right. Oh, definitely. And like it's funny to say that because like even though like I get like what you're saying, I agree with you. We're still talking about them meeting Howard Stern characters, which are real people. But yet for me and you, it's like holy shit, that's a puppet, which was awesome to me though.
It's the man with his hand up the puppet's ass though that we're really
Right,
excited about seeing.
of course,
uh,
of course that's it. But at the same time, it was still like, wait a minute, that's the Gary the Squirrel puppet.
yeah, that's the Gary the Squirrel puppet. Um, well, I can't also let you go without talking about what will go down as the most memorable thing in that documentary, which is the Kenzan, and subsequent removal of it. Like, what was the first time you ever saw that used in a wrestling match?
Uh Man, I'm not sure. The first time I saw, actually no, it probably was Nick Gage versus Abdullah Kobayashi. I forget what number it was,
I
but it
think
was
it's
one of the
not.
tournament of
It's
deaths.
like it's 10 or 9. I think. Right? No, no,
Yeah,
no, no.
that would make.
Yeah, I think it is.
I feel like it was 10.
Yeah.
I could be wrong though, but it was one of those. And Nick puts the Kenzan right on top of his head and just hits it with a chair, and then couldn't get it out, and it was disgusting. And then the footage of it getting pulled out later, I couldn't actually watch. Like I remember watching it, but like, like through open fingers or like while looking away and like half watching. And then fast forward 5, 6 years, and I'm the one getting it pulled out of my head, which is an unreal thought because that was like always one of those things where I was like, I don't think I could do that. And then I get put into this position to be in Tournament of Death, which was a huge deal to me where I'm like, I got to do something. And then
Mm-hmm.
I came with the idea of doing that to myself, and they were all for it.
Well,
Um,
sorry, go on.
no, I was going to say, like, just the Kenzen thing is such a gross idea. Like, I think a lot of people don't know what it is. It's also called like a decorative frog. And
Okay.
it's like this little like square inch and a half, square 2 inch metal board with a bunch of spikes on it. And I think the real use for it is you put it in the bottom of like vases and things like that, and you arrange like flowers,
Mm-hmm.
if I'm not mistaken.
Mm-hmm.
And then all these like Japanese wrestlers started it where they were just putting it into each other and slamming each other on them. And then next thing I know, I'm like, hey Matt, Tremont, do you think it'd be cool to like just punch it into my head? And he's a good friend, so he did it for me.
Well, you said it's like a little square bed of nails, and now that I've seen a lot of these and have become quite familiar with researching them, uh, there's a diverse array of shapes and sizes. And you mentioned the Kobayashi match where he had two little ones put in his head. You had a
Yeah.
massive one. Like, did you get to? Did you know? Like when Matt bust that thing out, were you like, oh shit, that's way bigger than what I thought it was going to be?
Oh no, I saw it. I saw it beforehand, and I guess at the time I didn't even think of it that way. Like in my head, it was just like, all right, this is something that's going to be gross, and this crowd will like this, so let's do this. I don't remember thinking about the size of it at all, to be honest, which is probably not keeping my health in mind.
Well, and also the match goes on for like you that moment happens, like he puts it in your head, and then the match goes on. Were you just like at that point like, oh my god, can this just end, or was it
Um,
just adrenaline beyond belief?
a little bit of both.
Okay.
When he first put it in, I remember like going around so everybody could see it in my head, and I think he pinned me right after, and I kick out,
Yeah.
and I think I said to him, "Hey, can you please take this out?" Like I said something like more polite than it should have been, and I
Yeah.
definitely used the word please. And so he starts trying to do it with his teeth and with his hands, and like he can't do it. So at some point I go, fuck it, just leave it. And he punches me, and then we go back to the match. And like that's where I think adrenaline kicked in, where I was like, fuck it, can't do anything about it, just got to do this. So like if I remember correctly, like we did some of the matches like major spots after it was already stuck in my
Yeah.
head.
Yeah. There's
Like I'm
there.
pretty sure.
Sorry, go on.
I was gonna say like, I'm pretty sure like I did the cannonball through the light tubes, and we did like boxing with fucking water jugs and like all that while I had this like little weird hat on my head.
Yeah, that's the thing. After a minute, you forget really what you're seeing, and it does take on a bit of a little hat on the top of your head that does not come off
Right.
or move for love or money. And it's only there's this moment where he picks you up and I don't know if it's like a running power bomb or some where he puts you onto a garbage can, um, like on your back,
Yeah, he power bombed me onto
power
it.
bomb
Yeah,
you there,
yeah.
and it was just like that looked painful. And then just like the little hat's there, and you're like, oh wow. Oh,
Yeah, and then he pins me after that, and I'm going to roll out of the ring so he could be the victor and raise his hand and
yeah,
all that. And I hear him go, stay in the ring, stay in the ring. And I'm like, oh fuck, I have to do more. And like he puts me over in front of everybody. It was
yeah,
like a really cool.
yeah.
For me, it was awesome. And like Matt knows that like I appreciate that more. I appreciate everything he's done for me. And he puts me over, and then I walk to the back, and right through the curtain, I forget if it was the EMT or one of the security guards, like, keep walking, doctor's chairs are over here, and they brought me right to the doctor's chair, and then couldn't get it out, and then it
The
took two
scene.
men with pliers and all that.
Yeah. Have you gone back and watched it since the match or anything?
Oh yeah. What do you like the removal of it,
No, no, no. I mean the actual match itself.
or the? Oh yeah, I've watched the match plenty of times.
Yeah. Well, actually, I was gonna say, is Ricky like a punk dude at all, or no? Ricky Shane?
Ricky Shane Page?
Yeah.
No, not at all actually.
Really?
Um, it's funny because a fan hit me up before Tournament of Death, and he was like, "Hey, like, is it true you're straight edge?" I was like, "Yeah," and he goes, "All right, I got something for you and Ricky," and I was like, oh, "Okay, I didn't know Ricky was straight edge or into punk."
Yeah.
So at TOD, because I didn't really know Ricky that well, so at TOD, I'm like, "Hey man, like, are you into punk?" He goes, "No, why?" And I go, "Oh, because some fan hit me up about like us being straight edge." He goes, I don't really claim straight edge. He goes, I just don't, he doesn't drink, he doesn't do anything,
Yeah.
but he doesn't claim straight edge because he's not into punk. And he's like, it's just something I don't do. And so like,
Ah.
he doesn't claim straight edge or anything, but yeah, like he was confused when I was like, yeah, some fans bring something for us because we're the straight edge ones. He's like, oh, okay. He goes, I just don't do anything. He goes, sometimes I just tell people I'm straight edge because it's easier than going, no, I don't drink. No, I'm not an addict. No, I don't do this. You know what
Yeah.
I mean?
Yeah.
Um, is that why you were asking about that? I didn't let you finish. I'm
Well,
sorry.
that was that, and it was also I've just noticed like he's always wearing like Bob's Burger shirts or other indicators that would indicate at
Yeah.
least a pop punk leaning.
No, yeah, I don't think he's into like any of that. Like I'm not really sure what music he's into, to be honest. But I've talked to him and he's flat out told me he's not into punk.
Yeah, it's funny because there's like, but you're bringing the straight edge thing there, and it goes, like at least maybe it's in all of wrestling, but certainly talking to certain people backstage at TOD, that Tournament of Death, that it's like there's a lot of straight edge dudes and there's a lot of dudes that are not at all straight edge,
Oh yeah.
and it's not like a lot of middle ground.
No, definitely. I agree. Like there's some middle ground, but there's not a lot.
No, there's not a lot. It just seems like you have to. Yeah, I guess you have to pick your philosophy.
Right. Like 3 of the guys who wrestled on that show were in a stable called the Nation of Intoxication.
Yes.
And then I'm straight edge and I'm on the show. Josh Crane is straight edge. He's on the show. And then Ricky Shane doesn't do anything.
Yeah.
So yeah, like there's that. And then there's a couple other people who, they have their fun. And then there's the rare middle ground.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Is it like, I guess, like how, being a straight edge person, what is the recovery like for you? Because I imagine if you're not a straight edge person, there's a lot of things to help you with that recovery.
Right. I don't know. Like, I don't really think about it. I guess just because, like, for me, like, I don't want to say it's not an option because, like, I'm not like one of those people who's like, I don't know. I'm having trouble finding the words right now. It's just like it's not a thought in my head. It's kind of like at this point how it's like when people are like, "Isn't it hard being a vegetarian?" It's like, no, I've been doing it for 14 years. It's just what I do. So like, it's just kind of like I just kind of sit through it and get through it. I don't think about it, to be honest. Like, I remember after the Kenzan came out, I had a weird lump on the top of my head and I couldn't stop touching it because it was weird to me.
Yeah.
But like, yeah, like I don't take anything. Like, I might take some ibuprofen the night of or anything like that. But like, I don't have like a regimen. I don't really have anything I do to get over it. I got into using vitamin E oil recently to try to get rid of some scars that happened on my face that I don't really want there.
Mm-hmm.
But that's about it. Like, yeah, like, but for me, like, the pain, it's just kind of like, yeah, all right, this is here. I guess we'll get over this at some point. Which,
well, you say you're not tough, Jeff, but you're really not doing a lot of case for that right now.
Okay, I could take a lot of pain, but I'm not like a tough guy. You know what I mean? Like, I don't go out there and like, I don't know. I have this stigma in my head when people are like, "Oh, you're tough." It's like, no, I'm just gonna sit home and watch wrestling and like go for a walk or something.
You might not be violently aggressive as a person, but you're definitely a tough guy. Not a tough guy, but you're definitely
right.
You have a toughness. Yeah,
okay,
I know.
I'll take that.
Yeah, maybe it's must just be a hardcore thing where like when someone says tough, you immediately think of tough guy hardcore.
Right, exactly.
You're like, I'm not like that.
Exactly. I want to listen to the Descendants. I'm not listening to like, I don't know. I can't say anything. I'll get beat up or something.
Yeah, exactly. And you can take a lot of pain. And you can take a lot of pain, so it's going to go on forever. You getting beaten up. It'll be just like so long. Oh, they might just tire themselves out. To be honest, like they just be like, "Holy!"
I'll take that. If they want to get tired, I'll take that.
Oh man. Well, dude, I really do thank you for doing this. I could talk to you again all night. There's like a lot of things I want to talk about. We didn't even talk about our fun time hanging out backstage at the Descendants show, or we did get to lots of stuff. But we will get to that in part 2. But Jeff, thank you again, my friend.
Oh, thank you for having me. I had a great time.
I'm going to call up the first guest tonight, apart from Roy, of course. A friend of mine who I got to meet at the Tournament of Death last year. He's a returning guest to this show. Please welcome to the stage, Jeff Cannonball. I had you cued music too, but I got too excited about doing that high five, Jeff.
This was a great high five.
It was a good high five. It's really terrible when you miss a high five.
Oh, we nailed it though.
We nailed it in a high profile situation. So, Jeff, you've come back to the show now. You've been on the show before.
Sure, yeah.
And we talked a lot. Like, so people understand you're a deathmatch wrestler. You're a wrestler.
Sure.
But you're
known for the deathmatch.
Known for the deathmatch. And believe me, if you have not seen this guy in a wrestling match, oh my gosh, you are awesome. But when I got to see you for the first time, your entrance music, I'm standing there, I don't know what to expect because I see that this guy has a Tear It Up rip-off shirt. I found out it's actually legit later on, but I'm like, this guy's selling a Tear It Up rip-off shirt? Like what? Maybe you just thought that was like a stock image or something? And then all of a sudden I hear Plastic Bomb blaring over the PA by Poison Idea, and out comes Jeff Cannonball because you're also like a punk rock hardcore kid.
Sure.
For days, right?
For a couple days.
For a couple days.
Yeah, a couple days. Actually, I remember at Tournament of Death, I didn't use Plastic Bomb. And you kind of reprimanded me about that. And so this past weekend at Cage of Death, I finally made them use Plastic Bomb.
Really?
Yeah, so I'm back to doing that now.
I bet. It was odd. And so you just finished what,
from what I've seen, is an incredibly brutal weekend.
Oh, definitely.
Was Cage of Death? Is it harder than Tournament of Death, or is it what's the different feel? Because they seem like very different shows.
Well, Cage of Death is pretty much everything that you get at a deathmatch show, but we're in an actual cage. So it's kind of like, and we had 8 people in the cage this year. So it was kind of like no matter what happened, you're getting hit with something, even if you're not meaning to get hit with something. So at one point, I hit one of the opponents with one of those big blue water jugs, and it went flying and hit my partner. So no matter what, you're getting hit with shit. But for me, Tournament of Death was the most painful day of my life.
Yeah.
So I'll give that one over Cage just because of that.
Well, I made this documentary. I'm not plugging the documentary, but it's called Bloodlust Tournament of Death, and it's about deathmatch wrestling.
That's a great plug.
Thank you. You can find it on YouTube. It's doing no, but in it, Jeff steals the show because you had a Kenzan put in your head, hammered into your head.
Yeah.
And then it's removed.
Which was even worse than getting it hammered in.
I bet.
It was much worse, actually, getting pulled out with pliers.
Yeah. And
2 grown men with pliers had to pull this chunk of metal with a bunch of nails on it out of my head.
But it wasn't just 2 people. There's people holding down skin, people holding down you to make sure you because they're pulling so hard on the top of your head. Now that people have seen that sequence, have you had anyone come up to you and talk about it?
Immediately, shortly after that came out, I wrestled in New York, and I don't wrestle in New York too often. They just don't like me there for whatever reason. And this was right after it came out, the weekend after, and I had multiple fans come up to me. And they just brought that up, and that's all they talked about. And then I was like, I have the DVD, and so I sold a couple DVDs based on that documentary, which was awesome. At that show, actually, my manager was AP Mike from The Best Show.
Yes.
And so they were Best Show fans who were talking to me about wrestling that they found out about me through you. And I was like, this is just everything I like coming together right now at this merch table. It was perfect.
Well, that's what I'm saying. As soon as you finally break straight and start smoking weed, you and me will become one person. Oh, well, except I can't wrestle. And,
no, you can. You can get nails hammered into your head.
I would cry. That's the thing. When anyone who sees that sequence has said to me is what's he like? And I'm like, he's the sweetest, most awesome, vegan, straight edge, hardcore kid that you've ever met. And they're like, he's not terrifying?
Yeah, and I saw a couple of the YouTube comments because I'm not used to, I guess, relative popularity. And that YouTube video has a bunch of comments on it that are almost 100% negative about me and the people in the documentary. And there's a part where I'm just looking at my arm, and there's a bunch of things about how I'm doing heroin. And I'm like, oh, okay. And they're like, yeah, clearly this Trump-supporting guy is doing heroin. I'm like, I didn't vote for Trump at all, and I've never done heroin or even drank alcohol. But because I do that, everybody assumes that I'm going to be this crazy, drug-addicted, right-wing sister fucker or something or other. And everybody just hates it.
Yeah, and it's funny because we talked about this on the other podcast, but that was the thing for me. I've watched deathmatch before, deathmatch wrestling before. I've watched, I love wrestling. If you believe me, this could go all wrestling very quickly. But
sorry to everybody else in the room.
But I and I thought I knew what it would what the type of person that would be involved in that would be like. But it's a huge swath of people that are attracted to it, like Punk.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's definitely because you do get your people who are, just to go off the YouTube comments, the Trump supporters and all that stuff. And you get
the YouTube comments for that video are ridiculous.
Yeah. Oh, it's very mean.
And I have, being a large overweight person that takes their shirt off at concerts for years, I've had some mean comments thrown my way. But that video, oh my God.
But yeah, you do get the people who are, the stereotype, I guess, of what you would think. But then you do get, I wasn't even the only straight edge person in that video. Mm-hmm. And everybody on the comments is, these people are all fucking junkies and this and that and whatever. And it's no, there's at least 3 people in that video that I know of are completely straight edge or clean and whatever you want to call it. It like you said, it attracts all different walks of life. You have, just like with Punk, where you get the people who want to come and just get drunk at the show and throw beer around and do whatever, and then you get the dudes with the X's on their hands and all that, and it's just different people like different things, and they all come together under this one banner. Sometimes it's Punk, sometimes for me it's wrestling.
Well, speaking of coming together, when are you going to bring the two passions together and start doing another band?
Whenever Andy Scarpula over here decides to do a band with me.
Whoa, Andy it up. In the house, legendary Philly hardcore, sorry, New Jersey hardcore.
Wait a minute.
New Jersey, oh my God, Philly Boy Roy's on my brain.
No, but I don't know, like, wrestling takes up so much time that I feel like I'd be a terrible bandmate at this point, because almost every Saturday and most Fridays, I'm wrestling at this point, and, I would feel bad for somebody else who'd be like, hey, let's do a band, but hey, by the way, I can only play shows on Thursdays or Mondays. And, I feel like I would just be a terrible person to be in a band with. But I would still like to try again.
Well, given that Philly Boy Roy just called in, Best Show caller extraordinaire, how did you first hear about the Best Show? Because you are also a member of the Best Show.
Friends of Tom.
The Friends of Tom, but not just a friend of Tom, a contributor to the Best Show.
It was when I was younger, and they had the Smash or Trash segment, and then a buddy of mine's band was on it. I think we actually
did talk about this briefly, yeah.
And that got me hooked on listening to it, and I thought the John Worcester calls were real at the time. I was like, what the hell is going on? It blew my mind.
Wait, shh.
I'm sorry.
Shh. They are real.
And then I got hooked on it immediately, and now it's cool because, like you said, I did the record with Tom by way of Gary the Squirrel. I had AP Mike manage me, and now I'm on a podcast with Philly Boy Roy. So everything's just working out for me in that realm.
Well, we got to do one thing to bring it full circle. You got to bring Tom Sharpling to his first TOD.
Oh, I feel like Tom would never. I mean, not that we speak all the time at all. I feel like he would never speak to me again. He already kind of he didn't seem happy with me for wrestling at the Gathering with the Juggalos. So if I brought him to a live performance such as TOD, I feel like he would not be happy.
No. What has the more lively fan base? Would it be the Gathering of the Juggalos and wrestling in front of that group, or wrestling in front of the TOD audience?
Oh man, TOD. I think they kind of understand wrestling more.
Yeah. Yep.
So they're very into that. But when I was at the Gathering both years, all they want to see is you bleed. So they don't care what's happening as long as the people in the ring are just drenched in blood and cutting themselves up and going through panes of glass and things like that. So in that case, I guess TOD's more into it overall. But the Gathering, I tried to sleep there, and I was woken up at 6:30 in the morning to people chanting "fuck your sleep." So that's the more lively crowd in that sense. So it's different. It's different things.
Are you sleeping in a tent?
Yeah, I the first year I went home right after I performed. The second year I wrestled on Thursday, and my girlfriend Tara Calloway wrestled on the Saturday show. So they gave us a campsite. So we got a tent, and we're like, fuck it, we're going full in. And so we set up the tent, and I was done wrestling probably about 4 a.m. We got to the tent at 5:30 a.m. and I'm a light sleeper. It's hot out, and I'm sleeping on the ground. And I barely got to sleep, and then probably not even an hour later, I wake up to people chanting "fuck your sleep" and fireworks going on. And somehow she slept through it the whole time, and I'm just sitting there this is the worst. I hate this now. I was having a great time, now I'm miserable.
The lineup for the bathroom at Gathering the Juggalos every morning must be insane, because there's all these people that have to put on the makeup.
Well,
hundreds of people just lined up.
They all wait till the last day, I noticed.
Oh, they don't?
Weird.
Oh.
Because the first year I went, I've been 2 years now. The first year I went, I was the day before ICP played, and nobody had the makeup on. I was like, this is weird. And then this year I was there for 3 days, so I was there when ICP played, and that day everybody's got the makeup on. They're all ready to go.
I guess you put it on the Friday, it's going to be all runny and shitty by the Sunday.
So they wait for the day where it's now's
the time.
Shaggy Two Dope's going to notice me wearing this sick-ass clown makeup. And then, you're going to credit 9,000 other people wearing the clown makeup, which is awesome to see.
Yeah.
And I think we've talked about, when I was at the Gathering, I got to go on stage with ICP and whip Fagos into a crowd of 10,000 people. And, there's nothing like standing on stage. I mean, you've probably done it. You're famous.
No, I've never whipped Fago into a crowd. I'm not that famous. I'm small F famous.
I standing there looking into a crowd of 10,000 people. I'm just this is crazy. And here's Fago. And, just throwing that and spraying. I'm this is crazy. And then my girl, her name's Sam. She wrestles under Tara Cowley. Sam's phone broke because it got soaked in Fago and all that. And afterwards she goes, I don't even care. That was actually kind of fun. And she, the rest of the weekend was just furious because she'd go in the porta potty and there's shit everywhere. and like, my parents aren't going to listen to this. She smoked weed at the gathering. And she never smokes weed, but she's like, I can't take this. So she just started getting high at the gathering, which I thought was hilarious.
Getting High at the Gathering is an amazing name for a record.
When me and Andy do our band, that's going to be the
Yo, Getting High at the
Two
Gathering.
straight edge guys are going to make a record called Getting High at the Gathering.
Well, if you need to add some authenticity to this project, I know a vocalist
There you go.
who might smoke a little marijuana.
And I'll pull some strings. Kevin Gill, who used to do
OG.
for Togetherness Records.
That is
That's why I keep telling you to get him on the show.
I gotta fucking.
And I keep telling him to get you on his show.
I forget every couple days that I just blank on it. That oh yeah, that Kevin Gill that I hear every week on Kevin Gill show or on Keeping It 100 is also the same dude that put out the New York City hardcore documentary compilation.
Yep, and he did that. He did a bunch of No Redeeming records.
Yeah, a lot of No Redeeming records.
And now he books the rest of them at the Gathering. So I get to go to the Gathering and talk about Kill Your Idols and the Cro-Mags, and it's awesome because I'm sitting there you would never think this, and we're talking, and he goes, "What do you come out to?" And I told him Plastic Bomb, and I didn't have my music on me. He goes, "How about the Cro-Mags?" I go, "Okay." He goes, "I have Age of Coral in my car. I'll go get it right now." And he ran to his car and got it. And I came out to the Cro-Mags that night. I was like, this is pretty awesome.
That's the most New York hardcore thing ever.
Oh,
You're
100%.
What's your favorite punk band? I don't know. I like the Clash or the Sex Pistols. Probably Gnostic Front.
Yeah.
You should probably say Gnostic Front.
That's basically what happened.
That's basically what happened.
But no, he's awesome, and we'll do this band, we'll pull some strings, and we'll play the Gathering.
Well, I'm gonna come see you at the Gathering in whatever capacity it is, because I gotta go to that. That's my
100%.
It's only my bucket list, so I can chant "fuck your sleep" and pour Faygo in people's faces and set off fireworks.
I'm gonna just sleep in my car down the road next time. I'm not getting a tent again.
Well, I'm gonna need someone to crash, so I might be in that car with you.
Perfect.
Fuck your sleep, Jeff. Fuck your sleep, Jeff.
And I'll wake up and Sam will sleep peacefully, and I'll be so confused by how she does it.
Well, Jeff, I hope you come back for a part 3.
Anytime.
Thank you so much, my friend. Woo! Everyone give it up for Jeff Cannonball! Chris?